What's up, bitches? I hope all you can see me. This is a little weird, and I'll explain why in a second. So I went to fire up this live stream from my work PC, and that didn't work. Didn't work because I'm used to doing my live stream on my Mac, and the Mac is getting repaired at the moment. I see you guys are in here because I could see the comments. But so I was going to do this live stream on the Mac, but the Mac, of course, is broken. It's getting repaired. So I tried to do it on the PC. Coming to find out, the browser I use doesn't allow you to live stream. So it's a little bit of a pain in the ass. But anyway, here we are. Now I fired it up on my phone. So it should work. And it looks like it's working, but I'm not sure what the situation is going to be exactly with the live streaming tin. Oh, wait, no, looks like we got that taken care of too. Okay. Yes, okay, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. The shit that I gotta do to make all this flow nicely. Anyway, all right, enough with the personal technological issues and stuff. I got this, everybody was complaining about the shakiness if I hold it. So I got this on the stand thingy. And that appears to be helping. So, yeah. I can't wait to get the Mac back, man. I missed the fucking Mac already. Jesus Christ. Return of the Mac. Not only is that a good song, that's a good thing that I can't wait to happen. I feel like the camera's all up in my grill, too. Like, I wish I could push it further back, but I actually can't do that because I need the phone to be close to me. All right, so what did I want to talk about today? A lot of stuff going on. The next regular secular talk show will be on Monday. So we're back to the regular grind on Monday. I'm actually really looking forward to getting back on air the regular way because I have a lot of stories that I want to talk about, and I just kind of miss the routine and the structure of the way it usually goes. I mean, the LA trip was fun and everything, but you know, I feel like it's time to just hop back on that regular schedule because I'm a guy who's kind of obsessed with schedule and organization to begin with. So the next actual secular talk show will be on Monday, but I did want to do a quick live stream today. Later on, I'll answer your guys' super chats if you have questions about Politicon or the LA trip or Rogan or TYT or whatever. And I'll apologize in advance for when I inevitably miss like half of the super chats because apparently every single time I've ever done a secular Talking Smack live stream, I've always missed some super chats. So my bad on that up front. It's never on purpose. It always just ends up happening. Okay, weird. I'm getting a calendar upcoming event thingy. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the big news over the past few days. There's now been a number of far right-wing attacks, and it's really scary because there's been so many in such a short time frame. And this reminds me of that Department of Homeland Security study that came out, I think it was in 2009, that said, look out because there's a rising threat of violent far right-wing terrorists. And they gave the number that 71% of the attacks or the attacks and the attempted attacks post 9/11 have been from far right-wing groups, whether they're white supremacist groups or sovereign citizens or just anti-government extremists. So now we're seeing some of that happening. And of course, there was the MAGA bomber. Come to find out, the guy who was doing all the, who sent the pipe bombs to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and George Soros and Joe Biden and Maxine Waters and all these people. He was a big Trump supporter. Now, it goes without saying, that doesn't mean that all Trump voters or all Trump fans or whatever are bad people, but this guy in particular was an extremist, and he absolutely positively loved Trump. He had, MAGA bumper stickers all over his van, and he had Michael Moore in crosshairs, and apparently he had a history of abusing people on Twitter, and he ended up becoming a terrorist. There was a gradual slide into radicalization that was pretty apparent if you look at everything that was happening on his social media feeds. So that was one instance of that. And then today we have basically a terror attack slash mass shooting where we have a lot of casualties. There's at least 8 people who were killed in a synagogue in Pittsburgh. And I think they already identified the guy who did it. The guy who did it is a violent neo-Nazi, basically. They have his profile from Gab. Gab actually scrubbed it and deleted the evidence, but there's, of course, all that stuff is archived anyway, so come to find out, he was a massive far right-wing extremist. He was a neo-Nazi. He apparently, as he was in the process of killing nearly a dozen Jews in a synagogue, he was saying all Jews must die. And it's terrible, man. This stuff is terrible. This stuff is gross, and it makes no sense. It makes no sense. I wanted to talk a little bit about the ideology that feeds characters like this, because I feel like that's really important. The white supremacist subculture online is just the swamp, and it's so scummy, and it's kind of crazy that these ideologies have grown in recent times, and there's so many holes in their arguments that I'm amazed that anybody's even attracted to them in the first place. So the most important point to me is that these are the same people who say black people are inferior because they have low IQs, but then they also go on to say that Jewish people are inferior even though they have high IQs. So these kind of characters are big into, like, junk science, the fucking eugenics garbage, and they genuinely believe that, hey, it's a legitimate conversation to discuss average group IQs, but it's hilarious because they're accusing black people of having low IQs and saying that's why they're terrible and we need to get rid of them. But Jewish people have high IQs and that's why they're terrible and we need to get rid of them. And it's amazing to me that they don't catch themselves in that giant logic fail. And they also hilariously say that, well, listen, Asian people have high IQs, but we don't want them in our ethno-state, and we're going to refuse to call ourselves inferior. But you're saying blacks are inferior, and you say blacks have low IQs. You say you also have low IQs compared to Asians, but you're not an Asian supremacist, which seems to make no sense, because if you're actually following your own logic to its conclusion, you would be on the extermination side of the equation when it comes to Asians versus whites. See, it's so absurd, because these are also the same kinds of people who love to bash lefties for doing identity politics, and it's like, how can you bash them for doing identity politics and then you buy into identity politics as well? You just buy into vicious, far right-wing white identity politics. So listen, I'm a simple dude, and I've always said you should judge people as individuals. You shouldn't judge people and just lump them in with a group and draw conclusions based on that. I think the most rational thing to do is to just judge people as individuals. But these guys hilariously go after the left and say, you guys judge people as groups, as they play white identity politics and they judge people as groups, and they're so caught up in these conversations about average IQ and fucking who's good and who's bad, and it's like, Jesus Christ, what a giant waste of time, man. And the radicalization is we're now seeing that destruction unfold in front of our eyes, and it's really creepy. And I mean, what can you say? People were absolutely massacred. People were murdered in cold blood. And this is a terrorist attack. That is what this is. So I've seen a lot of terrible responses already on Twitter. There's one dude who I just responded to. Maybe some of you saw it. He's saying he's blaming the left for this, of course, because the left is to blame for absolutely everything ever, according to these clowns. And by the way, the guy who tweeted that is... he trains police officers. And he was doing the typical tap dance of like, did you know that Hitler was a lefty? Hitler was a lefty and he was a socialist. And this guy who did this attack bought into Marxism or something. I mean, I'm so sick of the people who play partisan hack games all day long. Like, how is it that you can never admit ever that there's ever been a right-winger who's been bad or has done something evil or wrong? It's so fucking childish, but that's really the point we're at, where it's just always, finger pointing and blaming, and just grow the fuck up, man. It shouldn't be that hard to say. And we're at the point now where we obviously have to fight old battles in the sense that we have to relitigate the whole and rehash the whole Nazis are bad thing. You would think that was decided in the fucking 1940s, but no, we're right back to that. And the people who ironically claim to be most American oftentimes are the people who go down this slippery slope and fall into extremism, whether it be waving a Confederate flag and they were literal traitors to the United States of America, or sometimes embracing overtly white nationalist politics. If not in this case, the guy was a flat-out neo-Nazi. So it's just terrible, and my heart breaks when I see this stuff. And I just hope we don't see more of it, but you never fucking know, man. There's been a lot of radicalization that's happened online. So my heart goes out to everybody who was impacted by this terrorist attack. And make no mistake, it is a terrorist attack. There's already talk about, it's going to be charged as it's going to be a hate crime. That's what this is. Okay, fair enough. I guess you could say it's a hate crime because he targeted them because they're Jewish. But he's doing political violence against civilians. That's the definition of terrorism, political or religious violence against civilians. So I hope people call it what it is and recognize the threat that it is. And now you have, people on the right scrambling, at least the elected officials, I should say, scrambling to say, like, okay, violence is always wrong. Don't do this violence. Listen, man, I was tweeting about this last night. All political pundits, even if they're the hackiest of all hacks, like people like Sean Hannity, we should all make a point to bring up that violence isn't the answer. Because I think that oftentimes pundits just assume that the audience gets that. But no, there are going to be some people, and granted it's a tiny fringe of any audience, but there are going to be some people who are like, no, I actually think violence is the answer. And we should all make the point that violence isn't the answer. In my mind, the only time violence is justified is for self-defense. There's an imminent threat of attack against you, so you have to respond. And I just don't see these clarifications made by almost anybody in the political dialogue, and it's maddening. But the thing is, one could make an argument that it's like, well, we have a violent culture anyway, and that kind of feeds into stuff like this. And I think that's kind of true. Like, we casually accept the bombing of people overseas, but then people try to draw arbitrary lines around like, hey, we just shouldn't do violence here against each other. Well, no, you also shouldn't be doing the violence against the people overseas. You shouldn't be bombing those 8 different countries. Yemen was not about to attack us, and we're defending ourselves. That's not what happened. And there's obviously the various forms of domestic political violence is accepted on the far right, whether it be police brutality or things of that nature, Guantanamo Bay, torture, and stuff like that. So it's almost like we have a culture of violence to an extent. And I always avoid those cultural-based arguments, but I think there's a degree of truth in that point. So we need a total realignment of our priorities and our morality. And we're nowhere near having the proper discussion in this country, and we're nowhere near trying to foster the proper value system. And I think we're seeing the terrible situation unfold in front of us right now. Okay, so like I said, I will take your super chats in a little bit. Right now, I just want to run through some of the quick things I wanted to talk to you guys about, but hold your fire on those super chats. I'll let you guys know when I'll be taking them. It should maybe be, 20 minutes or so from now. All right. I just watched the Mitt Romney Netflix documentary, which I wanted to see for a long time, and I didn't see it. And I'm happy I watched it, because what it showed me is that Mitt Romney is exactly the guy that I thought he was, and almost the exact caricature that the left has made him out to be. In fact, I think that this kind of proves that Mitt Romney is that entitled Thurston Howell robot that, we joke about. So there's a few things that struck me in the Netflix documentary. First of all, he genuinely thought he couldn't lose. He really thought he couldn't lose. He was convinced, both he and his camp were convinced, no, we got this. And I'm talking about when he ran in 2012 and when he was against Barack Obama. And the level of delusion, man, that it takes to think like, oh no, I got this. Dude, you're Mitt Romney. Everything about you sounds fake and overcoached, but they were so convinced, and this shows you how deep that right-wing bubble is. They were so convinced that, oh my God, look at all this news about Obama that's negative, because he probably watches Fox News all day. And he was so deep in that right-wing bubble that he thought like, no, seriously, this is going to be easy because I'm being told in my own bubble that everybody hates Obama. So, yeah, I'm just going to fucking do a cakewalk into the end zone here. This is going to be like nothing. So this goes to show you that anti-intellectualism is pervasive on the right. It's not like it's just a tiny fringe of the right. It's also like the establishment politicians on the right who are generally viewed in mainstream media as like, no, they're acceptable. Like, oh, Mitt Romney's acceptable. Trump is horrible, but Romney's acceptable. He's up his own ass and he's in his own world and he's unable to view reality objectively. Because the poll showed the opposite as well. I mean, that's another important point, is that the polls in the Mitt Romney versus Obama race, they had Obama up the overwhelming majority of the time, but he was still so convinced that it was going to be a cakewalk. Even on the fucking night of the election, they thought he was going to win. So I thought that was amazing. It seriously is amazing that he thought, I can't lose this. Okay. The other thing is, repeatedly in the documentary, he made the point that was that big scandal. Remember when he said, 47% of the country is going to vote for Obama no matter what, and they're going to want their free stuff, and they're going to take from the producers and all that. He said that repeatedly behind the scenes of the Netflix documentary, where he basically said, the path we're going down, we're going to have the rich people tax too much and free stuff given everybody else. Unbelievable that that's his framing. It's like, no, dipshit, we have... As of right now, the richest 6 people have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the world combined. We have record levels of wealth and income inequality. I mean, we're talking about one family, the Walton family, 6 people. They have more than 40% of the United States combined. And we could, go through fact after fact. Half of workers in America make $30,000 a year or less. And this guy looks at this current political climate and economic climate, and he's like, we got to give the rich guy another break. And all these moochers and parasites, they just want free stuff. And he said that over and over behind the scenes, like, oh my God, look at the path we're going down. He thinks he's some sort of savior by stepping in and saying, I'm going to defend the rich people. I mean, the level and degree to which just run-of-the-mill politicians on the right have bought into this ridiculous Ayn Rand framing of the situation is comical. So it's funny because when he got caught with the 47% comment, he basically, oh my God, I'm going to clarify it, I'm going to backpedal, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that. But no, he really believes that, and in the documentary, that's proven because he kept saying it over and over. He also was obsessing over like the specific tax rate for rich people. He was citing some, article on whatever, Daily Caller or something like that, and saying, when you account for all the money, this, you guys still see me? Okay. I just got the low battery thing. That's not good. Let me see if I can plug this in. Okay, I just plugged it in. Hopefully that'll work now. So he was obsessing over the tax rate, like, oh my God, there's some people in like New York or California or whatever, all told, they would end up paying 65% of their money to the government. Again, I find that framing so misleading, because what he doesn't tell you is, well, how much money are these people actually taking home? And these are, of course, big business owners. And big business owners, they could, maybe some dude makes $35 million a year. But Mitt Romney's framing of it is not, holy shit, this guy's taking home $35 million a year. Lucky him, he can get basically whatever he wants, and he's rich beyond his wildest imagination, and he doesn't have to worry about money from now until he dies. His framing is, but oh my God, look at the fucking rate he paid in taxes. And I'm at the point now where I feel like any discussion of just the tax rate without talking about the raw income that they take home is fundamentally misleading. Like, that is fundamentally misleading to say, you know, oh my God, a 50% tax rate, a 50% tax rate. How unreasonable is that? Well, guys, it fucking depends. If somebody has $2 billion and you say, okay, I'm going to let you keep $1 billion of it, and I'm going to go take the other $1 billion and give people health care and build roads and give people an education and give people paid vacation time by law, I would look at that and go, that seems perfectly reasonable to me. The idea that just harping away on that rate as if that's the whole conversation, I honestly think that's stupid. Like, is it that easy to mislead people where all you gotta do is focus on the rate and then they think, oh, that's it. That's the first and last data point I need in the conversation. And then the final thing about the Romney documentary is there's one point where he bitches repeatedly about being called out for flip-flopping. And I thought that was fucking interesting because he didn't have an argument. There was no argument there. He was just like, and then they're gonna say, oh, they're gonna call me the flip-flopper. That's who I am. I'm the Mormon flip-flopper. Yeah, you are. Based on your record, that's true. That's what it is. And his whole thing was like, that's unfair. That's not right. You're gonna call me the fucking flip-flopper. That's not cool. Yeah, but dude, you are a flip-flopper. So what, like, I get that upsets you, but what's your counterpoint? But he never provided a counterpoint. He was just like, his conversation with all of his people behind the scenes, including his family, was like, all right, how do we get people to shut up about that? Like, how do we get people to shut up about me being a flip-flopper? Like, what can I do? Dude, you don't have the right to be outraged about that and to want to, like, shut everybody up about that if you have no substantive counterpoint. And in the movie, he's angry, but he has no substantive counterpoint. And it's like, to me, that is just, you know, quintessential current day modern far-right politics and establishment politics. It's like, I'm going to be really mad and really smug that I can't control the narrative, but I'm not actually going to explain to you why I should control the narrative and how my detractors are incorrect. It's just like this feeling of like, God, I wish I could shut up to people who are accurately calling me out and who are correct about this stuff. And it's just, he came across as so smug and so entitled. Everything that we portrayed Mitt Romney as, that's exactly what he is, man. And I thought it was a really good documentary. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's called Mitt. Some people say, oh, it paints him as a sympathetic character. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. It portrayed him as exactly what I thought he was and what you probably thought he was, which I think is good. It's very illuminating. It's very illuminating. He felt entitled to it. And at the beginning, I love when they were talking to people in 2008 when he ran the first time. Nobody knew who the fuck he was. People were sitting at a table next to him, and you know the camera people walked up to them. Do you know you're sitting next to a presidential candidate? And they're like, no, I don't. Okay. So, again, for those of you just joining, I'll take super chats in a little bit, but hold your fire on the super chats for now. If you send a super chat now, I will not see it. I'll probably be able to see it in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, more like 15 or 10 at this point. A few more points I want to get through. So I saw a video, it was a recommended video to me on YouTube. And the video was Adam Carolla going back and forth with Gavin Newsom. I guess Gavin Newsom went in for an interview on Adam Carolla's podcast. Now, let me say up front, I'm not the biggest Gavin Newsom fan. In fact, I don't like him at all. Now, I'm sure if I had a conversation with Gavin Newsom, him and I will probably agree on many issues, but I don't trust him. I think he's this smarmy politician. He looks like a kind of a sleazy politician. I'm not just judging him on his looks, to be fair, but yeah, he seems to play to a right-wing crowd. When he's in front of a right-wing crowd, in front of a left-wing crowd, he'll pretend to be more left-wing. And I don't know. There are a lot of politicians out there who I do trust and I do believe, and their record bears out that they're wonderful, whether it be Bernie Sanders or Ro Khanna or Tulsi Gabbard or Pramila Jayapal. And it's just Gavin Newsom, not hot on him, okay? But he goes on Adam Carolla's podcast. Adam Carolla is kind of like I would call him a casual right-winger. Almost like I'm a default right-winger kind of guy, where he just has this very knee-jerk reactionary, feelings of anger and hatred toward the left. And he almost admits that a lot of that's based on his personal life and how he grew up and what happened around him and yada, yada, yada. Well, anyway, Gavin Newsom goes on Adam Carolla's podcast, and they end up getting into a big argument. And in the argument, Adam Carolla makes this point that, because Gavin Newsom says, hey, I want to stop predatory payday lenders from taking advantage of minority communities. And Adam Carolla is triggered by the fact that Gavin Newsom brought up minority communities. So then Adam Carolla basically pushes back and keeps harping away and hammering at Gavin Newsom and basically tried to get him to admit, no, the entire problem is families, the breakup of the family. Listen, I think if you talk to most people, they'll say, hey, it's important to have, a family structure to support you. Not because of, oh my God, we need a traditional nuclear family of one man, one woman and stuff like that. No, because I don't think it matters if it's a man and a woman, or if it's a gay couple and it's a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. It's about providing structure, support, and material well-being. So, is it important to have support and love and adoration at home? Of course. I think everybody would admit that. That's not really a political thing. It is preferable to have a good upbringing in the sense that you're loved and you're supported and you're being provided with organization and material well-being. Yes, that's a good thing. But Carolla keeps trying to get Gavin Newsom to admit that no, that's the entire problem. The entire problem in any minority community is that the lack of the fathers and the lack of a family structure. But that's just not true. To try to disregard and make a point of disregarding all other factors, a shitty economic system that has always been relatively shitty and still has, provides a wage that's not even a living wage for millions of workers, for example. To disregard that is, I think, incredibly stupid. And the fact that you can get triggered because he brought up minorities when his greater point was, hey man, we need to stop these predatory payday lenders. How do you not agree on the predatory payday lenders being bad part of it? And he simply didn't, or if he did, there was no acknowledgement of it. He was saying, no, the only problem is the breakup of the family and we need to fix that. Well, it is also a problem that we have predatory payday lenders who charge insane interest rates where they're basically screwing people over and they're allowed to get away with it. Why wouldn't, the idea that, hey man, let's shit on something like, for example, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which gave $12 billion back to defrauded Americans because financial institutions were fucking them over as a matter of standard operating procedure, to shit on something like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau because, hey, these communities have problems anyway and they need more fathers in the home. I mean, what a fucking tool to make an argument like that. And I don't, it's kind of stunning to me that there were a lot of people who watched that clip and they really thought oh, Adam Carolla obviously schooled Gavin Newsom. Now, I already told you, I'm not a big fan of Gavin Newsom. I don't like him. But it's almost like they're taking joy in being anti-intellectual about the situation and not wanting to discuss deeper issues about the economy or social policy and the drug war, for example. These things also matter. But to a guy like Adam Carolla, it's no, only berate people if they have a broken family and try to tell them, no, you need to have a family that's together. And that's the end of the conversation. And in his mind, it's all you have to do is just work hard and have a family and then everything's going to be good. But Adam, as I just said earlier, we still have people who work full-time jobs and they don't make enough money to survive. The minimum wage is not a living wage. So it doesn't matter how much you have a family structure intact and how much you can try to have personal responsibility. The fact of the matter is, some people are still going to get screwed by this system because the system's not great. 45,000 people dying every year, up to 45,000 because they don't have access to basic health care. No amount of personal responsibility scolding is going to fix that situation. No amount of personal responsibility scolding is going to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and return money to defrauded Americans. And I'm so tired of this lazy, like the lazy far right arguments that are cloaked as like, I'm just keeping it real, common sense type shit. Because it's not common sense and it's not keeping it real. Listen, I already conceded that anybody who's being reasonable will admit it's better to have some sort of a structure in your life family-wise in order so that you can get love and organization and, you know, you can have material support. I think that's important. But to act like that's the entire conversation is honestly the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. And it's almost like crossing the line into almost victim blaming a little bit. To act like, oh, well, if you have no option in your town but to go to a check cashing place or get predatory payday lender help, well, that's obviously your problem. It's not something that we can address from a policy perspective. And then he kept trying to, like, here's the other thing. Even if you agree with him totally on the family's point, what fucking point? Is that a politician's job? Is that a politician's job? Like, I'm going to scold you about your family life and about, you know, your personal responsibility. Why the fuck would that be a politician's job to try to tell people how to live their personal lives? I like my politicians to believe in freedom. So, you know, hey, man, if you grew up in a single parent household, well, obviously some stuff happened in that single parent's life where that's the situation you were grown up in, and I'm not going to put a value judgment on you because you were raised in that situation. I'm not going to put a value judgment on a gay couple raising a kid. I'm not, like, this idea that you can say, I believe in freedom, but then also you want your politicians to scold people about their family upbringing and act like that's the only issue. No, I don't even want the politician involved in that issue because that's not their fucking job. Their job is to set up economic policy and social policy and to, you know, craft our laws in this country. Why the fuck do I want them to scold people about personal responsibility or growing up with a family? What a weird thing to want a politician to do and act like if a politician talks about that, that's the politician who's keeping it real. No, that's the politician who's usually diverting from the real issues that they can impact. A politician can impact the drug war or, you know, criminal policy or foreign policy or tax policy. But it's like Adam Carolla was begging Gavin Newsom to not do his job as a politician and address serious problems like predatory payday loan industry and simply just berate people for not growing up with a family structure. I mean, it's just so stupid. So that got me mad because he thought he was nailing it. I get it. If you watch this interview between Adam Carolla and Tucker Carlson, it's a discussion that they had. You're gonna see what the new breed of right winger is arguing, and you're gonna see, you know, what the core of their beliefs are. So watch that. Watch Tucker Carlson versus Adam Carolla, Tucker Carlson and Adam Carolla in conversation on Adam Carolla's podcast. And you'll see that a lot of their stuff just rests on these goofy cultural issues. Like, they love the culture war. As much as they act like they hate the culture war, they love the culture war. Like, they love to talk about the snowflakes on college campuses and the politically correct stuff. And it's amazing to me how many people get lost in the wilderness of the culture war without thinking even for a split second about some incredibly serious stuff like, I don't know, healthcare policy, for example. Okay, that's my Adam Carolla thing. Now, I'm going to get to your super chat shortly. Give me 5 more minutes and then we'll hop into it. I wanted to address so I had a great podcast with Joe Rogan. I had a lot of fun. I think he enjoyed it as well. There's one fact check that I did on Twitter. I also wanted to touch on it publicly here on a live stream because I think it's important anytime I do a fact check, correcting something I said, I want to do it on as big a platform as I could possibly do it on. I don't want to hide my fact check, if you will, of myself. There's one thing I said in that podcast that I didn't get correct. And that was, I said Canadians get free healthcare, but also if you were to just go into Canada, you can get free healthcare too, and you don't have to pay anything. And there were some people from Canada who reached out to me and said, that's not exactly true. You actually do have to pay if you're not a citizen in Canada. And I did more research on it. It turns out they're totally correct. The article that I was referring to, though, was apparently for refugees, they get full health benefits. Now, my understanding was like I could go into Canada, for example, and say, hey, man, I'm going to go bankrupt. I can't get healthcare in the U.S. because I'll go bankrupt. So I'm going to Canada, and I can basically say to them, like, I'm a refugee of sorts, so can I have my healthcare now? And then they would give me healthcare and they wouldn't charge anything. But no, the refugee is like literal. Like you have to be designated a refugee before you can get healthcare in Canada that's free. So it doesn't, so I was wrong to say, because he even asked, hey man, what if a guy from New Jersey went to Canada and said, I'm going to get healthcare. He could just get healthcare and it's free. And I said, I think so. And that's actually not true. That's not the case. So I wanted to correct that. Now, on top of that, the other thing I said was about Trump, and he made that point with Scotland. That is true. So I mentioned how Trump was on like David Letterman's show before he was president, and he said his buddy went to Scotland and he got very sick in Scotland. He went to the hospital. He got taken care of on the way out. He asked, like, what do I owe you? And they said nothing. So, and some people were saying, and again, I don't know the specifics of this, but some people were saying, oh, in the UK, it's more like what you described on Rogan. And again, Trump described that in Scotland, okay? But in the case of Canada, it's not true. So I wanted to lay that out for everybody. And obviously, this should go without saying, but some people would like to pretend this isn't the case. That doesn't mean that single payer is wrong. Single payer is obviously still objectively way better, and the Commonwealth Fund report from recently really lays that out in detail. Out of 11 developed nations, the United States ranks 11th. So that goes to show you we're failing disastrously on that front. Now, some right-wingers acted like, aha, we got Kyle on something. No, you didn't get me on anything. I mean, I got one fact wrong, and now I'm correcting it. And I'm more than happy to correct it, because I want to be correct about things, and I don't want to say things that are wrong, because then what happens is people will see, oh, he said something that's wrong. Now maybe the rest of what he says is not legitimate. And that's why I'm correcting this, because it's important to be accurate, and it's important to, lay it all out for everybody and have your word mean something. And that's why repeatedly during the podcast I said, hey man, more than happy to be fact-checked on that. Like when I mentioned how half of workers in America make $30,000 a year or less, immediately after I said, hey Jamie, you want to fact-check me on that? And what did he do? He went there and he fact-checked me on that, and I was right. So that's why I'm more than happy to come out here when I get something wrong and to correct it and to lay it out for everybody. And as a final point on this, the free healthcare thing, there were people who were responding on Twitter going, the healthcare is not free in Canada. Hey, asshole, when anybody says free healthcare, that's shorthand for paid for via tax dollars. We all fucking know it's not free. We know it's not free. We know it's paid for. But it's a matter of being paid for via tax dollars. So here in the U.S., we pay taxes, and a lot of our tax money goes towards offensive wars against countries that didn't attack us, and corporate welfare for, ExxonMobil and fucking Walmart. So I would rather prioritize healthcare and have our tax dollars pay for it. And by the way, it would net save money. You would save money if we moved to a Medicare-for-All system, and everybody would be covered. Even the Koch brothers fucking Mercatus, whatever the fuck you say it. Medicare-for-All costs $32 trillion over 10 years. If you don't do Medicare-for-All, it costs $34 trillion. So you save $2 trillion by doing Medicare-for-All, and you cover everybody, and you have better health outcomes, and the list goes on and on and on. Okay, now let's hop into the Super Chats. I'm done with all the things that I wanted to talk about, so I will be more than happy to answer your questions. Again, I apologize if I end up missing some of the stuff. Hey Kyle, I'm a huge fan of the channel, and I made a Patreon account just to support you the day you announced we could, but it pulls in $14K per month. Could you give us an idea of where that goes? Thanks. So this is something that I've spoken about before. I mean, when we were at the height of the election, the 2016 election, myself and other progressive outlets and other independent media outlets were doing very, very well. Then we were hit with adpocalypse. And I know for myself and David Pakman in particular, we literally our revenue was wiped out on YouTube for an extended period of time. For like, I think it was like a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And we thought, we're done. We're done. We might never be able to recover because it looks like we were blacklisted and we can't get any ads at all. And so we panicked and we were scared and we didn't know what to do. And so it was at that time that I decided, and many others decided, all right, what we need to do is we need to go directly to the people and be grassroots funded. And that's when myself, David Pakman, Jimmy Dore, and many others, Sam Cedar, we all decided, and independently, we didn't like get together and decide it, but it certainly, my conclusion was, I simply do not trust YouTube anymore. Because obviously they could pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. And the fact that they could do that means what we're doing is not stable. It's not secure. So we went directly to you guys. I set up a business model where I wanted to keep everything totally free and open and have all my content available to everybody. So the way to do that and still be supported is to say, hey man, if you like the show, consider just donating $2 a month or $5 a month or $7 a month to the show. And so that's what I did. And you guys came through in the clutch and you basically saved the show. Now, since Adpocalypse, we lost all of our money, and then there was a rebound of maybe, I would say, a 50% bounce back. So instead of making what we made during the 2016 election, there's now a 50% cut. So again, for the YouTube stuff, I don't trust them, and I'll never trust them again. So we need the support of the people directly. We need your support directly. And I'm proud to say that, you guys are our main source of funding. Now, as far as what the money goes towards, it goes like any other business. Listen, I never said that, this is totally a non-profit venture. Of course it's a profit venture. It never said that we're going to take all the money and donate it to Code Pink or anything like that. It functions like any other media organization. And I would say we do a lot with not nearly as much as the other organizations do it with. And just so you guys know, I've been approached repeatedly by people who want me to do advertisements and sell out in a sense, and they offer a lot of money to push products, and I've said no. And I've been able to say no because of you guys and because of your support. So I'm proud that we're grassroots funded. That money, obviously I can't give a full breakdown of everything that the money goes to at this exact moment, but it goes towards the things that you would expect it to go towards. It goes towards paying for the studio. It goes towards, I have a part-time editor who helps me with stuff. Every now and then, I like to, the people who've been with the show from early on and have supported the show from early on and helped the show from early on in terms of trying to help us grow, every now and then I like to help them out as well. So, yeah, I think you're still there. Sorry, I was getting a phone call. The Patreon money allows me to be allows me to represent you guys without having to feel like, okay, I'm going to go sell out and fucking go start doing ads for products that I don't even believe in. So that's the best answer that I could give at this moment. I try to be as transparent as possible. As far as media, that gives a full line-by-line breakdown of everything that the money goes towards. But what I can say is, if you like the show, I would appreciate your support, even if it's just $2 a month. And just so you know, we never even came close to hitting our goal on Patreon. It was supposed to be, we asked for, I think, 20, and we never touched it, or 25, and we never touched it. So, but again, it was because of you guys that the show was saved, and I owe you guys a debt of gratitude for that. Okay, let's see. I don't know how 2020 will go, but I'm worried Biden might win. Do you also have this view, or do you think Bernie or even Trump will win again? I don't know how 2020 will go, but I'm worried Biden might win. No, I don't know. Biden's not going to win. Biden's run 1,000 times, and he always gets his ass handed to him. He was the vice president. For those of you who don't remember, he ran in that election, and he lost. He got his ass handed to him. So this is one of those things where he's media created. Like, they make it, ooh, Joe Biden is the same shit they do. Ooh, Hillary Clinton. No, they did try to do this with Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. What happened to Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio? They got their fucking asses handed to them. Now, there are some polls that put Biden ahead of Bernie, but those polls, when you dig into the methodology, they're total horseshit, man. They're total horseshit. They oversample Democrats. They leave out independents. They oversample old people. So it's total horseshit. There's no way that Biden is going to be the last man standing. In fact, I think as far as the corporate Democrats go, he's the most convincing corporate Democrat. But he's the most convincing in terms of a fake populist as a corporate Democrat. But there are going to be real lefties running. So the real lefties are going to do better. And I think Bernie will likely be the nominee. And if he is the nominee, he'll end up beating Trump. So that's my take on that. Hey, Kyle, love the channel. I live in a town where the majority of my peers in and out of school are conservatives. I find it hard to debate with them because I'm so outnumbered. Any advice? Yeah, I mean, you don't have to seek out trying to change people's minds. Just tell the truth whenever you're able to tell the truth and whenever a conversation presents itself and lends itself to political talk. And that's how you convince people. You're not going to convince them by, like ambushing them and trying to convince them of something. You have to ease them into it in a way, if that makes sense. And also try to frame things from their ideology like I did with Charlie Kirk. So conservatives love small government, or they say they do. So say, okay, here's where I love small government. I want to get rid of warrantless NSA spying. I want to end the drug war. I want to, end the wars and only do wars for self-defense and not offensively like we do now. And just frame everything from their ideology, and that's how you can convince some people. Kyle, as an adult high schooler with friends who are vocal supporters of corporate Dems and such, what arguments would be best used to refute them? Their voting records. So show them Joe Manchin's voting record, how he votes with Republicans 61% of the time. Show them how, Chuck Schumer supported the Iraq war. Show them that if you're actually on the left, you need to support people who are for left-wing policies. And corporate Democrats half the time are not. They're usually pretty good on social issues and terrible on economic issues. Tell them to support people who are good on all the issues. That's what I would say. Hey, Kyle, I'm a poli-sci student who's going to D.C. for an internship program. What are some of your suggestions of progressive committees or candidates that I should apply to intern for? Thanks. I don't know, man. I don't know. You're a poli-sci student going to D.C. for an internship. What are some of the progressive committees or candidates that I should apply? I mean, Ro Khanna you should intern for. Maybe Ro Khanna, Tulsi Gabbard, Pramila Jayapal. And maybe get involved with anything foreign policy related, because that's an area where we desperately need left-wingers, because we're winning on the economic stuff in terms of convincing everybody. But the foreign policy stuff, people don't even talk about it as much as they should. Economic stuff is talked about way more than foreign policy stuff. Hey, Kyle, every show I've been watching since 2015. I'm worried progressives like the JDs will be weak on foreign policy. Maybe they believe in ending the wars, but the pressure might be too much. Yeah, they need to put that front and center more, and it's true that they don't do that. And I think that a lot of people on the left don't think that argument sells, but if you make the argument properly, it does sell, because you just say, hey, we need to end the wars, and at the same time that we end the wars, let's also take that money and then, put it towards a New Deal and rebuild our own country. So if you make that argument, you tie in domestic policy and economic policy to foreign policy, then I think that's a winning argument across the board. But you're right, very few people talk about it, so it's up to people like us to hold them accountable. Would you ever consider doing a video on all your favorite books, particularly about politics, asking, since in your old videos you used to feature many? Well, I feature them in that they were behind me, but I don't know how often I talked about them. I would consider doing a video on all my favorite books. I would consider that, but there's nothing that I'm working on in the short run. Would you co-host with David Pakman? I love to see how you play off each other in a full show with different news stories being covered. I mean, David Pakman's a friend of mine. I guess I would co-host with him, but that opportunity would have to present itself in the sense that we're in the same town at the same time, or he's doing some sort of special show and I happen to be at the place or whatever. But in theory, would I do it with him? Sure, I don't see why not. Maybe some future election coverage or something like that. Was a Shapiro fan until I realized he's a mega hawk who said torture is okay, plus supports Bolton on his show. Why do people say he's an anti-establishment guy? I didn't even know anybody said he's an anti-establishment guy, to tell you the truth. I didn't even know that. So I think that's ridiculous. I feel like a lot of people who like him would even admit that he's a very standard right-wing guy. Like, he's the guy who presents those right-wing arguments in the most convincing way, even though those right-wing arguments, I think, are thoroughly discredited and kind of silly. I can't believe anybody says he's anti-establishment. Yeah, he definitely supports Bolton. He supported all the wars. He said he's okay with collateral damage and killing civilians. I'm not kidding about that. He really said that. He used to rail against the gay agenda, which is taking over the schools. Hi, Kyle. Would you be in favor of a blanket semi-automatic gun ban? I'm not sure, actually. I'd have to think about that one. I support universal background checks. I support a ban on high-capacity magazines. I support making it harder to own a gun in the sense that we have tests to prove mental health and adequacy, however the fuck you say it. But I don't know. I'd have to think about that particular policy. Hey, Kyle, maybe some disagree, but I've noticed in the recent year or two that your demeanor, tone of voice in your show seems less energetic and you seem increasingly jaded as time has gone by. Are you aware of this / doing okay? Yeah, I'm doing fine. But the news sometimes does beat you down, though. It definitely beats you the fuck down. So if I seem worn down, it's because I am worn down. But that's not going to stop me from talking about this stuff because it's all incredibly important to talk about, and I will continue to make a point of talking about it until I can no longer talk. So, but that's funny. So that's now a thing. People are saying I'm less energetic over the last 2 years. I never heard that before, but I'll take your word for it. Congrats on 600K. 2019 is an election year for Canada, and we are fucked. Thank you for the congrats on 600K. And I hope that the left is not fucked in Canada. But, you know, I think that this is what happens when you have the pseudo-lefties who are in control, like Obama or Trudeau, where they do some good things, but in other ways they're not good and they're defenders of the status quo, is that's when you get the populist right backlash. But when you have populist left in power, there is no backlash because everybody loves the populist left. FDR couldn't stop winning. That's a pretty important point if you ask me. Hi, hey Kyle, I would like to see you have a conversation with Destiny on YouTube. People always bring up Destiny. I think you guys would have a lot to talk about over Russia, tariffs, and free trade, possibly even more. Noam Chomsky calls the education system a system of indoctrination of the young. Do you agree with this analysis, and do you have any ideas to reform it? I think it largely is that. Ideas to reform it? I mean, I guess you just need to have a better curriculum that's more objective and more honest. Like, I would love it if schools started teaching the Iraq War as an illegal war and a war crime and something that should have never happened, and they should teach that people like Dick Cheney need to be locked up. But of course they would scream, oh my God, left-wing bias or liberal bias in academia, even though that's really, more than anything, it's an objective retelling of the situation about how it is an illegal war. That's not conjecture, that's a fact. So, and I agree with Noam Chomsky. Yeah, he does. It is a system of indoctrination, for sure, especially in the media. When you see the people who end up getting hired in the media, most of the time these are people who've been indoctrinated to have the same basic beliefs, and they're very pro-establishment beliefs. Did you see... Ooh, shit. Did you see Candace Owens tweet about the pipe bomb? She's such a dumb fool. Yeah, she said there's no way that this is somebody on the right or something like that. Just hack. A partisan hack. That's all she is. Now that this is a trending topic, I wanted to get your take. What did you think about the felony disenfranchisement for felons on parole? Should they be allowed to vote or not? I think they should be allowed to vote. Because it's not like you're no longer an American citizen if you committed a crime. I mean, I don't even think it's a debatable one for when they get out of prison. They should, of course, be allowed to vote 100%. So it's kind of crazy that one's even debatable because they're still American citizens and they paid their debt to society, so they absolutely should be able to vote. But what they want to do is suppress the vote because most of them will probably vote Democratic, and so they want to do voter disenfranchisement and make it so that those people can't vote. Hey, Kyle, if Bernie loses in 2020, should the progressive side go for somebody younger like Tulsi Gabbard, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? I simply don't care about gender, race, or any of that stuff in any context. I just care about the policy ideas, and I care about who I think can win. So if you're populist left and I think you can win, I don't give a fuck what your background is. I don't give a fuck what your religion is, your ethnicity is, your gender. Couldn't care less. And that's why I say I'm one of the true, anti-identity politics people. You have a lot of people on the right who say they're against identity politics, but then they end up buying into a framework of right-wing identity politics. And so I think those people are full of shit. I'm actually against identity politics in that I don't care about those characteristics that these people can change. I care about their policies and whether or not they can win. Like I told you at Politicon, I want to remind you to check out Destiny on YouTube and Twitch. Not the video game, but something like Destiny Debate Sargon or whatever. Okay, I'll do that. Do you think Elizabeth Warren has the personality to beat Trump? She's right most of the time on policy, but I don't think she can fight dirty enough to win. It's not that she can't fight dirty enough to win, it's that she's overcoached. I think that she doesn't know how to just have no filter and be herself, and you need to have no filter and be yourself in order to beat a guy like Trump. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned about Elizabeth Warren for that exact reason, that she's going to be overcoached and she's going to come across as disingenuous. When you're up against Trump, you need to just speak exactly what your mind is and tell everybody what you think. Bernie's wonderful at that because as Trump is railing against in crazy conspiracy theories and calling him crazy Bernie, Bernie's out there like, it's not crazy to want to give people health care, so let's give everybody health care. We need a Medicare-for-All system. And so he sticks to substance, and Bernie hammers Trump in that way. Elizabeth Warren, I'm concerned because she's overcoached and she's going to buy into the framework of the corporate Democrats too much. Let's see, did I miss anything? Big Seltzer sends their regards. Thank you, Chaos Gamer. I appreciate that. Do you think Elizabeth Warren? Already did that one. Like I told you at Politicon, already did that one. Let's see. Hey, Kyle, if Bernie loses, already did that one. Now there's trending topic, already did that one. Kyle, what do you think about MMT? Hi, Kyle, supporting you in Patreon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. G1478. I just saw the a $2 one scroll by. It said, what do I think about MMT? I have large agreement with MMT. I have a lot of agreement with MMT. I mean, I think that there are aspects of it that, like, I think that when it comes to the framing of it, it's actually not the best because it gives fodder to your political enemies to say, look at these pie-in-the-sky, unicorn fairy dust lefties who think deficits don't matter and they're going to lead to runaway inflation. And so they're not fiscally responsible. That's going to be the counter-argument to MMT. Now, I think MMT is probably right on the substance of their responses to that, okay, no, it's not just deficits that lead to inflation. There has to be political instability also that leads to inflation. But I would argue we could say, hey, let's do all these important left-wing goals like Medicare-for-All, free college, living wage, ending the wars. Like, we could talk about all those programs, paid vacation time by law, and also say, hey, by the way, here are areas where I want to cut spending. I want to cut back on the military-industrial complex and the giant bloated military budget. I want to cut back on the corporate welfare, and I want to do that ASAP. So even though I think MMT they're probably correct on the substance, I don't necessarily agree with the framing of saying like, oh, we don't even need to worry about the cost of it. You see what I'm saying? They're right that when it comes to war and shit like that, nobody even thinks about, oh, how much does this cost? Can we afford it? And they only do that for programs for the people. But what I would say is there's actually enough stuff that I want to do new spending programs like Medicare-for-All, but also there's enough places where I want to cut to, where I feel like I could bring up the cutting spending as well, and that I think goes over better among the average person who might actually believe that the federal government's budget is like, a family's fucking budget, if that makes sense. Would it be a mistake impeaching Trump? Let's say we win midterms and pass Medicare for All, New Deal, etc. You think Trump will veto? How about Pence? How easily could Dems sway Trump with majority? Pence. We're not going to sway either one of them. And that's the problem with having Republicans in power in the first place, is that at least when it's a corporate Democrat, grassroots lefties can force the corporate Democrat to do the right thing in some instances. I mean, we've seen it happen. There's enough pressure on Obama where he started basically doing pardons and commutations for nonviolent drug offenders. There's a bunch of issues where the left was able to push Obama, and he did some decent things, whether it be the Iran deal or whether it be Paris Climate Agreement, or you name it. The problem with the Republican is we're not going to push them on anything. We're not going to push them on anything. They're going to tell us to fuck off. Now, in terms of impeaching Trump, I've always had mixed feelings on that. I think you definitely can do it because he's violating the emoluments clause of the Constitution, and he is corrupt and he is bought by foreign governments, including Israel and Saudi Arabia. But if you do get rid of him, yes, you get Pence. And Pence is just as bad, and you also fire up Trump's base so that they're going to be more active politically. So I don't know. I think you waste a lot of political capital and don't gain that much from it if you impeach Trump. Let's just worry about voting him out ASAP and destroying the Republicans with actual populist left Democrats and politicians. Do you think it would be better to run Tulsi Gabbard and have Bernie Sanders endorse her and work with her campaign? She is young, but he is popular. You rock. Thank you very much. No, I think we should just see what happens, and whatever the people want to do, they should do. So the only thing I really would insist on is that I want there to be more corporate Democrats in the race than populist left Democrats, because if you have more corporate Democrats, they'll split the vote among the corporatists and knock each other out, and then you clear the path for a populist left candidate to win. What you can be concerned of is, let's say there's 3 or 4 populist left Democrats in there and only 2 establishment people in there, then the establishment person can actually win, and that's scary as fuck. You should push the idea of progressive corporate tax, lower for small businesses and higher on multinational corporations. I agree with that. It would destroy Republican framing and force them to argue to the public as to why Bezos needs more money. That's exactly right. I agree with that. And this is a disagreement I have with some of the other progressive hosts. Cenk Uygur and I have had this disagreement for a while now. He's actually not in favor of cutting taxes for the middle class, whereas I am in favor of cutting taxes for the middle class, because the middle class and working class, you guys need a break. They don't need a break. The rich don't need a break. Corporations don't need a break. So I would argue till I'm blue in the face that we need to cut taxes for regular people and raise them on the rich, and we need to cut taxes for small businesses and raise them on multinational corporations. And by the way, to Obama's credit, he actually did small business tax cuts. I think over a dozen small business tax cuts, so that was good for him. Thoughts on a president going over the Supreme Court, assuming it were to strike down Medicare-for-All as unconditional? Thoughts on a president going over the Supreme Court, assuming it would strike down Medicare-for-All as unconditional? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But that's the problem with having a right-wing court, is that they could take a lot of the gains that we can potentially make and just slap them down on bullshit constitutional grounds where they pretend that something like Medicare-for-All is unconstitutional, even though it's not. Why did you criticize Ta-Nehisi Coates for voting Hillary Clinton but not criticize Sam Harris for doing the same thing? I don't know that I did that. I don't know that I did that at all. The only time I really criticized Hillary Clinton voters in a very fierce way is if they voted for Hillary over Bernie Sanders in the primary. Because even though I live in New York and I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton because I knew New York was going to go Democratic anyway, so I was able to vote for Jill Stein because I don't live in a swing state. I said I would have sucked it up and voted for Hillary in a swing state, even though I would have been crying and vomiting and shitting myself as I did it. But the only real issue I have is when people voted for Hillary over Bernie. If it was in the general and somebody supported Hillary, I don't begrudge them that. I mean, I see not everybody agrees on lesser of two evils voting strategy. So if somebody disagrees with you on that, that's not grounds for like lashing out at them or excommunicating them or whatever. But I'm not the biggest fan of either one of those people, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Ta-Nehisi, however you say it, or Sam Harris. I watch your show from Norway every day. Being half American, I'm glad to see someone like you doing such a great job educating the American people about our system. Ever been to Scandinavia, though? No, I have not. It's very cold there. That's the one downside about Scandinavia. Kyle, would you agree modern day politics is like wrestling, where most are in on the fact that it is fake, but choose to accept the narrative as true for comfort or entertainment? Love from Europe. I don't know. I actually think people are craving a more real politics, a politics that actually cares about them and economic issues and social issues and foreign policy issues and the real world. Because right now it does kind of seem like wrestling. And I think people would love it if it got more serious and we got people who were actually trying to help the American people. So I think it is like that, how it's kind of like wrestling, but it doesn't have to be like that, and I think people would accept it in a second if it became more serious and we got somebody who cares about the policy substance like Bernie Sanders. Can we stop going behind Dems and start the hard job of third parties with all that is going on with JD and big Dems who will always stop progressive candidates? First of all, I want to be crystal clear about this, as I've tried to be from day one, but some people, I don't think, understand what I'm saying. I've stated repeatedly, I will support an independent candidate or a third-party candidate if they happen to agree with me on my policy issues that I care deeply about. And there's nobody else in the race that supports those issues. I will support those candidates. But I'm starting to see a lot of people now say, no, I'm actually going to make a point of saying I will never vote for a Democrat, even if the Democrat agrees with me on the issues. I don't agree with that. And you're shooting yourself in the foot when you do that. Now, furthermore, if you want to start a third party, go right ahead. I'm not stopping you. The establishment is going to try to stop you, but by all means, go right ahead and try to do that. But my whole point from the beginning has been, it is literally, this isn't a matter of opinion, this isn't a matter of conjecture, it's a matter of fact. I know because we considered it. It's just harder to do than taking over the Democratic Party. Both of those things are hard. It is much harder to start a third party because they don't even have ballot access. You have, the Green Party only has access in 48 states or something like that. And by the way, if you were to want to go a third party route, I don't understand why people wouldn't want to start jumping directly to the Green Party because at least they have ballot access already. So I find it weird. It's like, oh, let's start a new party. Okay, by all means, go right ahead and do that. And if you run good candidates, I'll support those candidates. But I don't know why you want to make it harder for you, because again, not opinion, matter of fact, that is going to make it harder for you because the system is so gigantically, tremendously biased against third parties. And usually people who want to start a third party admit that. And they're like, yeah, no, totally biased. And it's like, okay, well then let's try to do the thing that we actually have a chance of winning at. And they're like, no, let's do the harder thing. I don't get that. I just simply don't get that. It seems like it's a self-defeating process. And the only major disagreement I have with this crowd is, if anybody is at the point where they say, I will literally not vote for a Democrat, even if they agree with me on the issues, you're shooting yourself in the foot, and you don't need to do that. You should vote for anybody who supports the policies that you support and who would make people's lives better. I agree. Used to debate to win over opponent's audience by using their framing. It's more productive than gladiator-style debating and more interesting. Thank you very much, Noah. What are your thoughts on the economy and the Fed Chair Powell? Do you think economy will get worse if he raises interest rates to stop inflation? Raises interest rates. Yeah, there's going to be issues with raising interest rates, and we're already seeing some of that. But the whole economy is a house of cards. So you can't... Trump is trying to pin all of the... Whenever the market hits a downturn, he always tries to blame, oh, it's the Fed and it's raising interest rates. No, you can't put it all on that, because our economy is a house of cards, man. Wages have been stagnant since the 1980s, and we reinflated the housing bubble, and we have a totally unregulated derivatives market. So we have all these problems, and it's not just the raising interest rates. Congrats on 600K. You were a superstar Politicon, and I wish I could have gone. I also hope a progressive can take out Matt Bevin here in Kentucky. From your lips to God's ears, Christian. I hope that too. Matt Bevin is one of the worst. Why didn't you call out Shapiro on Rogan's show? And please, can you debate the nutjob conservative on that panel? By the way, love the show. Thank you. I don't know what you mean. Why didn't I call out Shapiro on the show? What was I supposed to call him out over? I don't know what I was supposed to call him out over. I mean, he passed on a debate with me, if that's the thing you wanted me to call him out over. Oops. I mean... they're all snowflakes, man. What do you want me to say? They're all like Tommy Lauren, fucking Ben Shapiro, Ann Coulter. They love it. Oh, the right cares about debate and the left is running and hiding. No, I floated a debate with all you motherfuckers and you all passed, and it was even worse because she literally pulled out. But I don't know if that's what you wanted me to say on Rogan, or if you wanted me to talk about something else Shapiro did, but I don't know. It just didn't cross my mind. I was in the middle of a conversation flowing with him. Would you consider putting up a website or other solution as a centralized source with the links, articles, stories, poll studies, etc. that you most often reference on your show? No, listen, most of the time, if I'm talking about a story, the link is in the video description box. Sometimes if it's just a video, there's nothing there, but oftentimes it is in the video description box. And also, TYT has their own website, and they've been trying to build it out, I guess, kind of like a Huffington Post thing for a while, and it's not, if you're a YouTuber, you're primarily a YouTuber, and it's harder to branch out and just start like a website type thing. As a Middle Easterner with conflicting news, how do you tell truth about other countries when each country is pushing out their own agenda? I don't know. You just got to try to see what appears to be most reasonable. You got to stick by Occam's razor, which is the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. That's what I try to do. Seeing Pittsburgh in the national news is rare. Are the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting 2 miles from my house? Wow. And the MAGA bomber threats happening because we're close to the midterms? Coincidental? I don't know why they're happening now, but this subculture of like hate and vitriol and white supremacy and extremism online has been festering for a while, and it's scary. Like the guy was on Gab, the guy who did the terrorist attack in the synagogue was on Gab, and everything was just, oh my God, hate the Jews, blame the Muslims, blame, all hate minorities, yada yada. Even to the point where he's like, oh, Trump is controlled, by the evil Jews, and like just people's brains are fucking unfortunately packed full of conspiracy theories, and it's a shame that it's gotten to this point. I wish we had, the proper arguments and interesting stuff that's true be what everybody's interested in. But some people end up going down a really bad path. Would you be in favor of a proportional representation voting system such as a single transferable vote or ranked choice voting? Yes, I support ranked choice voting vehemently. I love ranked choice voting. Also, I support a modified direct democracy type system. I think we need to have a constitution, and those things are off the table, and that's super important to point out. But I also think that on the biggest 5 or 10 issues every year, we should all be able to vote directly on them. Like the people should be able to vote, hey, should we legalize marijuana? Hey, should we end the death penalty? Hey, should we end the war in Iraq? I love direct ballot initiatives, but it's got to be in a modified way where not everything is like that, because constitutional issues shouldn't be voted on like that. Those are kind of off the table. Hey, next time you're on Joe Rogan, could you show him a minute of a Kyle out of context and discuss the idea of someone talking like this on CNN? Just a suggestion. Love you. Yes, I can do that, and I'm fucking mad I didn't do that the last time because that's hilarious. I'm sure he's never seen a Kyle out of context video, and I'm sure he'd absolutely love it. Hey, Kyle, and shout out to Leon for making the Kyle out of context. Hey, Kyle, do you think a federally run ISP similar to USPS would be a good idea to compete with private ISPs? Yeah, I do. I like that idea a lot. Good thinking. 40 pound, not 10, LOL. I don't know what that means. Progressives must start discussing the differences between fair and free trade. Secondly, they aren't pro-life, but anti-abortion. Thoughts? Yeah, anti-abortion. I like that framing. But then again, when they say they're pro-life, they walk into so many lovely traps that I love the fact that they describe themselves as pro-life, because they're also fucking pro-war and pro-death penalty, so they're not really pro-life. But yeah, discussing fair trade and free trade, sure. Sure, I would prefer to call what we're in favor of as fair trade. Protectionism has been sufficiently maligned where you can't say you're a protectionist now or people laugh at you, but the reality is protectionism, a version of protectionism actually makes sense. You don't want to have trade policy crafted to only serve elites and corporations. You want trade policy to also benefit workers. Hi, Kyle. Huge fan of your show and a proud patron. Have you ever thought of taking secular talk on the road? I saw Jimmy Dore live in Chicago and the energy was palpable. Congrats on the 600K subs. Thank you. I've never considered it. I'm not a comedian and Jimmy's a comedian. However, I do like doing live stuff in front of audiences. So I'll try, like, if I'm presented with the opportunity or whatever, like I was with Politicon. I'm saying Patreon because you said Patreon. Like I was with Politicon or, whatever, a speech at a college or something like that. I'll try to do that stuff whenever I can because it was fun doing it in front of an audience. But I haven't considered a live show because I'm not really a comedian and he is. And his live shows are awesome. They're really interesting. Hey, Kyle, I missed you, but I wanted to ask you a question. I agree with universal health care, but do you think companies will flee if they are not making much money under a Medicare-for-All system? No, I think that, first of all, most of the private insurance industry they'd be eliminated. There would still be some private insurance companies, and I would allow them to exist, but most of them wouldn't exist anymore, and that's good. That's a good thing. There still should be the option of private insurance and supplemental care. That's fine. But the baseline should be Medicare for all. And I don't think those companies could compete with the system that functions, with the Medicare-for-All system, so they're going to go out of business. And that's fine. The only thing we need to deal with is the job situation after the fact, because a lot of people are employed by that industry, and we don't want to leave them behind. We want to have new jobs and new job training and programs in order to help those people when we move away from a for-profit health insurance system. And if that's a hard pill to swallow, let me just say this. If we paid people to cut your lawn with little scissors, hand scissors, and everybody's lawn was cut by people getting on their hands and knees and using these scissors and going blade of grass by blade of grass. Some people would say when we try to bring the lawnmower into play, oh, what about all these jobs you're going to lose and what's going to happen now? And I mean, it is fair to care about people's livelihood and to care about their jobs and their well-being, but that doesn't mean we should stick by that system of cutting the grass with fucking nail clippers or tiny scissors. We still need to get to a better system, and that's what we need to do with Medicare for All. It's going to be a tough transition, but it needs to be done, and we know it's the right thing to do. missed both my super chats, but it's all good. So I know you like basketball. How big of an NBA fan are you? Knicks fan. Who are some of your favorite NBA players? Fan for years, patron. Much love, Kyle. Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody who is a patron. It means the world, and thanks for all these super chats. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm a Knicks fan, yes, and as a result of that, I'm a scared, lonely person because I might die without ever seeing the Knicks win a championship. So very sad. My favorite NBA players, I mean, back in the day it was Tracy McGrady on the Rockets. Rockets were my number 2 team, and also the Nuggets were my tied for number 2 team. That was back in the day when it was like Kenyon Martin and Carmelo Anthony and Allen Iverson on the Nuggets in like 2008. I thought that was such a badass team. Today, who are my favorite NBA players? I don't know. I mean, I'm a little bit of a snob. It's funny because as anti-elitist as I am when it comes to politics, I'm very populist when it comes to politics, and I'm anti-elitist. When it comes to sports, I'm the polar opposite. I am super elitist when it comes to sports. So you know what that means, right? I love watching LeBron James. I loved watching Kobe when Kobe was doing his thing. Like all the best of the best players, Steph fucking Curry, Klay Thompson. I love watching them because I like to see history, and I like it when records are shattered and teams are dominant. So I hope that answers your question. I love the NBA. On 2020, I've heard the presidential candidates can pass their delegates to other candidates when they drop out. Wouldn't this put Bernie at a disadvantage if there's a crowded field of corporate Dems? You know, I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. I feel like you can't. They're in a position. The corporate Democrats are in a position where they can't try to do another openly brazen, spit in your eye, slap you across the face type of stealing of an election. So they need to be more crafty with it. If they do what you're describing, that's so fucking clunky and not clever that's a fucking recipe for absolute disaster and revolution in a Trump second term. So I don't know what they're going to do. I think they genuinely feel like they could just beat Bernie and that Bernie doesn't have a chance. But I think Bernie will trump the Democratic Party in the sense that Bernie will beat them even despite all of the fucking attempts to knock him down, because now his profile is big enough where he can kind of curb stomp them all the way through. So I think Bernie will be the nominee, but we'll see what happens, and hopefully their fuckery gets overcome. Hey, Kyle, have you heard of Huey Long, Louisiana senator, governor in the 30s, who championed left-wing populist policies like Share the Wealth program? I haven't heard of him, but that is fucking fascinating, and I'll look into that. Huey Long. Here are 16 euros for bottled water of your favorite band. What do you think? How probable is a second Trump term? Here are about 16 euros for bottled water of your favorite brand. Okay, thank you. You mean seltzer, not water. I'm the big seltzer sellout. You gotta remember that. Big seltzer, bitch. All right. How probable is Trump's second term? Right now, it's a coin toss. It's 50-50 as to whether or not Trump will be reelected. If anything, it maybe leans a little bit against him, like 55-45 against him, or maybe 60-40 against him at most. But yeah, because the Democrats need to get their shit together. They need to run a populist left candidate who can win. And people always forget that Trump is good at making his own case. So he's always going to make his own case. And so you have to be able to fight back effectively and not try to be too overly coached and use the shitty standard Democratic strategy mold, which has failed every single time over the past 3 decades. Hey, Kyle, have you heard of the push for public banking in California? It's on the ballots as Measure B. I really think the left should push for public banking on a local level nationwide. Yes, I agree with that. I agree with public banking. I was given a great flyer by some nice folks at Politicon, and I'll cover that on the next show. There's people are pushing for that in California, I think elsewhere too, and I totally agree with that. I think it's a great idea. Do you think you'll go on Rebel headquarters with Emma and Jordan? Also, do you think Chuck and Nancy will step down if Dems don't win back Congress? No, they'll not step down. We have to force them to step down. And will I go on Rebel headquarters? I haven't been invited, but yeah, I've seen a bunch of Emma's work and Jordan's work, and I think they do great stuff, so sure. Trump on the Pittsburgh shooting, saying that if there was someone with a gun in the temple, it would have been prevented. It's Saturday. Jews can't use a gun on Shabbat. it is considered lighting a fire. Ivanka keeps Shabbat. Oh. Wow. Trump just doesn't know how to ever say, like, the calming presidential thing. And sometimes that helps him massively, because he was able to say, I'm not presidential, and that's why I'm so wonderful and tremendous. And that did help him in many ways. But I feel like one of the few times where everybody wants somebody kind of measured and presidential is right in the midst of a national tragedy. And Trump does not offer that at all. Thoughts on running against weak Chuck Schumer in 2022? I'm in Staten Island, and I'll be the first to vote for you. I don't call him weak Chuck Schumer, I call him Wall Street Chucky. Would I run against Wall Street Chucky? Now that's something to think about now, isn't it? Will Kyle Kulinski run against Wall Street Chucky? If I do, he better watch out, because he's going to have the election of his life. He'll be hanging on for dear life. What would an economic collapse look like in today's day and age? How should we prepare? An economic collapse, I mean, it would look similar to 2008, man. That's what I think it would look like. How should we prepare? I don't know, maybe if you have the ability to get involved in the market, you can diversify the types of currencies that you have. And I hate to be super libertarianish, but maybe, you know, precious metals might be a good thing to have as well. I don't know exactly how to prepare, but I know that you can probably short the market. If you short the market, you'll probably get fucking rich off of, because the market's going to crash at some point. So if you short the market, you can get fucking tremendously rich. Late to the stream, just want to say it was nice meeting you at Politicon. Thank you. Nice meeting you too. I love seeing all you guys at Politicon. It was awesome. Also, Bernie 2020. Totally agree. Patron here. So I spoke with Keith Ingram of the Texas Election Board about the machine switching Beto votes. He assured me this is a minor issue. Thoughts? I hope that your friend is right. I hope that Keith Ingram is right, because there were a bunch of articles that are going around saying that the voting machines were flipping. If you clicked Democratic Party ticket, like a straight party line vote, it would flip it, and it changed the Beto votes to Ted Cruz votes. So I hope it was just a minor issue, because I really want to see Beto take down Ted Cruz. I live in Arkansas, and while the areas of the state I live in fairly left-wing, the state itself is right-wing. Our senator is a cartoon villain. Would you vote for a corporate Dem in my situation? Listen, my philosophy, and maybe I'll go over my voting record again with you guys one day in detail as to like which politicians I voted for. My philosophy is to always vote for the furthest left option available. That's my philosophy. And oftentimes that could even mean voting for somebody to the left of me, because even if you vote for somebody to the left of you, if they win, it's not like they're going to get everything they want. So you need somebody to the left of you sometimes to drag that Overton window, to drag the spectrum of debate back to the left. So if you have actual socialists in power, their compromise position and what they might be able to get in place is social democracy, which is what I like. So that's my strategy. I always like to vote for the furthest left option available, and depending on whether it's a swing state or a safe state, the furthest left option that's viable, if that makes sense. So I hope that answers your question. You have to make that decision yourself if you're comfortable with the lesser of two evils voting and what your own litmus test is. Because I don't think litmus tests are irrational. I think they're actually perfectly rational, and you need to force politicians to mold to what you want them to do, because you're a voter and they should listen to you. You are their boss. So it depends what's in your litmus test. I think that's really important. Israel's been doing lots of airstrikes in Gaza again. I haven't seen those stories, but I don't doubt it for a second. Hey Kyle, is there an email I can get in touch with you? Love your work and would love to do video pro bono if you ever need. I have a part-time editor who helps quite a bit. Your knowledge and ideas are definitely needed, especially in the Black community. Thank you, Cliff. I really appreciate that. And reach out to me on Twitter. That's the best way to get in touch with me. Big Seltzer and Big Burrito. That is all. Thank you, Johnny. And wow, Johnny, quite a contribution. Thank you very much. Do you think Beto can still win? He looks like he's a bit behind. Yes, he can still win, but it's a fight, man. It's Texas. It's always been Texas, and there are issues there. I mean, there are a lot of diehard right-wingers there, but then there's also, I'm sure, some voter fuckery going on behind the scenes. That's not to sound conspiratorial. It's just based off of the reporting that I've seen. But of course he can still win. Of course he can still win. He just needs to keep fighting, man. Thanks for getting back to me. Thanks for getting, I think he's supposed to say me back into keto and seltzer. Big Seltzer, in my opinion, is Polar Seltzerade. Was great seeing you, Politicon. Thank you, Spencer. It's great seeing you there, and I love seeing everybody there. It was a lot of fun. Do you think if conditions get bad enough, it's possible that there could ever be a far right or far left revolution take over in the West? No. We have too many distractions for there to be actual revolution. I mean, we have fucking Netflix, and we have video games, and we have iPads, and we have laptops, and we have fucking... There's just so many things to distract us that there will not be a revolution. And I don't even support a revolution. I support a political revolution. I support a hostile takeover of the system through nonviolent means. Conservatives believe that the government doing things is inherently left-wing, and they use this logic when they say the Nazis were liberals. I guess they think the government building a wall is left-wing. Alan, that's a great point. The government doing anything is left-wing, therefore my wall is left-wing. Wait, what? Kyle, huge fan from Pittsburgh. I'm 16 and have an interest in politics. Any career recommendations? Also, when making a new deal, should we use the original FDR programs? No, we need new programs. And you're 16 and interested in politics. First of all, that's awesome. You're getting a head start on most people. And as far as career recommendations, dude, that you're gonna develop that, and you're gonna make your own decision on that. I can't tell you exactly what to do. But what I can tell you is there's always stuff you can do in politics. You can literally become a politician. You can help politicians with their campaigns. If you start getting involved young, then your future's bright and a lot of doors will open up to you. But you're 16 and involved, so you're already doing better than a lot of people. Thoughts on a public option for groceries to help underserved areas where the market has failed at cost rather than for profit? You know, I've never heard of that before, and I've never thought about it, so I'd have to think of the upsides and the downsides of it. But I do think there should be some sort of initiative to stop food deserts where people only have like a 7-Eleven or some shitty options, like some fast food is the only food they have within like a fucking 5 or 10 mile radius. And that ends up being like the only place people eat, and they get super fat. And so you have a mix of like obesity and poverty and just hopelessness. So we need to do something to address that. I don't know if I support the exact thing that you floated. Kyle, do you know who Tim Pool is on YouTube? If so, what do you think of him? He considers himself center-left. Thank you. I know of him. I don't know specifically what he's about because I haven't really watched his stuff. Hey, Kyle, your take on Tim Canova. I support Tim Canova. Let me make that crystal clear. You should vote for independent Tim Canova over Debbie Wasserman Schultz. 100%, not even close. I would say everybody needs to do that. Also, please do a video on Huey Long if you ever get the time. I still have to look up Huey Long to see what's going on. Hey, Kyle. Oh, I already did Tim Canova. Forgot to say lost 40 pounds, you and Rogan rock. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's funny because I only spoke about the keto diet a few times and spoke about my own personal thing with that, where I did the keto diet and I just randomly melted off a tremendous amount of weight when I was younger and I was really into working out and stuff. I only spoke about that a few times, and I've gotten a lot of people who say, hey man, because of you I lost all this weight. And I was like, wow, really? Because I've only spoken about the keto diet a few times. I feel like Rogan's spoken about it so much more than me. Why do people act like Ben Shapiro was the Thanos of debating? You would dismantle him, son. Well, his presentation is good. He talks very fast, and he's very sure of himself, and he's very, I don't want to say arrogant, because that has a negative connotation, but he talks fast, and he's very sure of himself, and he always has something to say, even if the thing is not correct, or if it's out of left field, no pun intended, or if it's a weird thing to say, or if it's a non sequitur, or some other logical fallacy. The fact that he talks fast makes a lot of people go, oh, he must be right. But, of course, that makes no sense, and you should base your arguments on logic, and empirical data and on evidence. And I don't think he does that because fundamentally he just argues for kind of standard doctrinaire establishment right-wing politics. Ojeda's website says he supports a public option rather than Medicare for all. Is he still a populist? In my opinion, he is. Love the show. You rocked it, Politicon. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I did not know that. I actually thought he did support Medicare for all. I'm not surprised to learn that he supports a public option and not Medicare for all. Would I still call him a populist? I would still call him a populist because I feel like populist means fighting for ordinary people. And I think Richard Ojeda definitely is fighting for ordinary people, even though I can have some big disagreements with him, like he wants public option, I want Medicare for all. But the populist aspect of it is more, he fights for ordinary people, and also he's anti-corruption and anti-establishment. And he's saying, I'll kick the lobbyists out. Here's my phone number. If you're a constituent, call me directly and I'll help you out. So he's definitely still a populist, even though I didn't know the Medicare for all thing. And I disagree with him on that massively. In fact, I wish I could have a conversation with him and sway him on that. Your take on Jimmy Dore being treated as a pariah of the left for his whataboutism and strong anti-Dem stance. Do you find it fair? Listen, Jimmy Dore is my friend, is point number one, okay? Point number two is, even though there are areas where I disagree with him, the fact of the matter is, I think that Jimmy Dore is simply trying to hold Democrats accountable. Now, sometimes you might say, and sometimes even I might say, well, I don't agree with that particular argument, and I don't agree with how far you went in this aspect, but I do think that his heart is in the right place. And I would vehemently disagree with anybody who says his heart is not in the right place. So you can have substantive disagreements with him and policy disagreements with him and strategy disagreements with him all day long. And for me, I have a mixed take. Like, some of his strategy stuff I totally agree with, and other parts of his strategy I don't agree with at all. But I definitely think his heart is in the right place. That's my take on Jimmy. Why do people act like Ben Shapiro? Okay, I already did that one. Thank you for exposing me to Dr. Carl Hart. Never knew that 80 to 90% of drug users are moderate users. Completely changed my whole perspective of drugs. Love you in the show, Kyle. Thank you so much, TJ. I really appreciate that. And yeah, Carl Hart is awesome, and he really is the first person to say the things openly that he's saying about how, no, you guys don't get it. Everything you think you know about addiction is dead wrong. Everything you think you know about addiction is dead wrong. So everybody look into Carl Hart if you haven't seen him. It's really eye-opening stuff. How do progressives in other countries help you and the Justice Democrats? I don't know. That's a good question. How do progressives in other countries help us? I think that anybody around the world who's fighting for populist left policies, even in their own respective countries, you're doing the Lord's work. It's a funny way to put it from somebody who's an agnostic atheist, but still, you get the point. Anything you could do that helps people, that gives people a better chance at having a decent life, gives people a better wage, that ends war, that ends corruption, all that stuff in everybody's respective countries and at a global level, I think that that's all wonderful. But how you can specifically help Justice Democrats, I'm not sure. How would you respond to the argument that Medicare pays 87 cents for every dollar hospitals spend? Love your show from Long Island. I'm not sure what that means, what you're asking here, because I think what you're alluding to is a point that I made recently. As of right now, 80% of the money that goes to private health insurance companies goes to actual health care. 20% goes to overhead costs. That used to be like closer to 50-50. They were that bad. They were terrible with it. Obamacare forced them to split it 80-20, okay? Under Medicare-for-All, or under Medicare, I should say, 92% of the money goes to actual health care. Only 8% goes to overhead cost. So I'm not sure if that's the thing you were trying to refer to, but those are the numbers that I know. It's from a Huffington Post article that I covered maybe about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. Hey Kyle, huge fan, but why such an anti-Kanye rhetoric? Forced labor in prisons, bringing jobs and manufacturing in the U.S., the environment, and the absolute... I think the thing cut you off, Joseph. But I'll answer your question. I don't consider myself anti-Kanye. I just think that a lot of the stuff he said is incorrect, and he's acting out in a way that seems off. So if Kanye were to do what Kim did and just try to get nonviolent drug offenders out of prison, I would 100% defend him. It wouldn't even be close. I would do nothing but sing his praises. Okay? That's an important point. And I need you to know that that's my take on it. Like, I will 100% defend him when he tries to get nonviolent drug offenders out of prison. That's what Kim did. She was 100% right. He's not trying to do that. He's trying to get Larry Hoover out of prison. Larry Hoover is a gangster who's locked up. One of the things he's locked up for is murder. So, no, don't let Larry Hoover out. Shouldn't do it. Now, ending forced labor in prisons, I am the guy that defended him on that point. Some people were trying to pretend like Kanye was pro-slavery. I said that's not what he's saying. He's trying to end forced labor in prisons, and I agree with him on that point. As far as bringing back jobs and manufacturing in the U.S., I totally agree with him on that point, but here's the problem. He keeps supporting Trump, and Trump is doing the opposite. Trump's a con man who's saying, I want to bring manufacturing back, but he doesn't end up bringing manufacturing back. He outsourced 93,000 jobs in his first year. His renegotiation of NAFTA was a fucking ploy. It wasn't real. It's almost all like NAFTA with a few minor tweaks. Some of them are even worse. So that's why I'm tough on Kanye, because I want him to, if he were to actually fight to end the drug war or something, I would support him 100%. So it's about these specific issues, and he's not doing the right thing on the specific issues. I want to try to join officer school to start out as a LT, lieutenant, since a lot of politicians tend to have a good chance of winning with a military background. I'm close to getting my 4-year degree. Your thought? I mean, if you feel like that's what you want to do, by all means, go right ahead and do it. I'm not sure what thought I could give on that, but you seem like you have your heart set on it. And yeah, if you think that's your path, by all means, go right ahead. I'm sorry I couldn't help more, but I'm just not sure exactly what advice to give to that. How do you argue for Medicare-for-All over public option? Some people don't trust the government and want the option. Well, you have to understand something. Medicare-for-All doesn't mean banning supplemental private health care. So you can get supplemental private health care, health insurance. But Medicare-for-All is just saying the default position is everybody's covered. Everybody's covered and is paid for via your tax dollars. So instead of all of our tax money going to fucking endless wars or corporate welfare or bailing out Wall Street, it'll go towards everybody's health care. So even people who are skeptical of the government, you need to let them know Medicare-for-All does not mean they ban private health insurance. If you want, you could get supplemental private health care and health insurance, but what we have is the default position is everybody's covered. Are you only answering questions about politics? And which Senate seats do you think will flip D to R? Are Dems going to take the House? Dems are probably going to take the House. They're probably going to take the House, but I don't know if it's going to be as big a blue wave as many people are predicting. They're not going to take the Senate, and I'm not sure exactly which seats will flip D to R, because I would need to have all that information in front of me, and I don't. Off the top of my head, no. You just touched on this, but I want to know what you think when people on the left, Cedar, Packman, call Dorr, useful idiot, dumb left, etc. Even if true, is this rhetoric helpful for the left? Yeah, like I just said, Jimmy Dore is my friend, number one. And number two, even if somebody could have the strongest disagreement with him ever and say, oh, he's dead wrong on this, this, and this. But I 100% disagree with people who think that his heart is not in the right place, or that, he's some sort of nefarious actor, or he's like a tool of the right or something. That's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. Jimmy Dore means exactly what he says. And sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I disagree with him, but his heart is in the right place. Would you consider having guests on your show? I do that every now and then, but not often. How about taking call-ins? We used to do that way back in the day. Stay awesome and keep up the great work. Yeah, every now and then, and by the way, I'll be doing I think I'm on John Idarola's show this upcoming week, and then I might be on Hassan Piker's show, and I know Scotty Nell Hughes I'm supposed to do at some point, but yeah, the format of my show specifically is not necessarily to have guests, but every now and then I do some talks with guests, and call-ins, we used to do that way back in the day, but I haven't really considered doing that recently. This is kind of like our town hall / call-in type situation. With censoring going on, will you also join YouTube alts like PeerTube or Mastodon? Both are non-profit, open source, decentralized social networks. I will look into all of my options, but if anything ever happens to this YouTube channel, you will see me on all the other YouTube channels who I'm friends with screaming about it at the top of my lungs. And also, if I lose my Twitter, you'll see me on YouTube. If I lose my YouTube, you'll see me on Twitter. Either way, you're going to hear what happened to me, and we're going to get through it. Thanks, love the show. Watching a while. What's your take on Trump-like politicians being elected around the world? Brazil's election at the moment is a mess. Yeah, Bolsonaro, it's crazy because what you have is a very like Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump type situation where you have like a center-left kind of guy. establishment-y politician against a fucking fascist like Bolsonaro, who's using anti-corruption rhetoric at the same time that he's like openly a fascist, which is scary as fuck. So it's scary, and my take is very simple. The only way you can beat the populist right is with the populist left. And that's why I'm pushing so hard to try to get these populist left candidates elected, because I know that that's the way you defeat the rise of fake populism on the right, and honestly, in many instances, it's just flirting with fascism or actually is outright fascism. The way you beat those characters is with populists on the left. What do you think would happen to all the health insurance companies if Medicare for All got passed? Most of them would go away. Would the companies just go out of business? Yes, most of them would go out of business. Some of them would stay in business and adjust to the new situation. And again, you'd have supplemental private care. So it's not like we're banning private health insurance. It's just most of them will probably go out of business because the Medicare for All system will be just better and cheaper. So that's what will happen. And we need to address the joblessness when that does happen, okay? We can't just shrug it off and say, whatever, fuck them. No, we need programs and ways to retrain people, get them involved in new fields, or keep them in the same field, but get them a new kind of job. So we need to have a safety net there for the people when the time comes. Have you seen the ad from Claire McCaskill about how she's not one of those crazy Democrats? I have not, but I'll take a look. I might cover that because I'm already fucking pissed just reading that. Fucking pen. God damn it. Oh, the pen is propping up the computer. All right, I got to try to remember that. Claire McCaskill. What do you think would happen to all the health insurance companies? Already did that. What I meant was the AHA claims. Medicare doesn't cover all 100% of hospital costs, while private insurance pays 134%. I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about here. But somebody tweeted me something similar the other night about how, Medicare, you still have to cover 20% out of pocket or something. Listen, these are all concerns that have been brought to Bernie about his Medicare for All bill, and my understanding is that he's made changes since his first draft. His first draft didn't include like dental and eye stuff. Now it includes dental and eye stuff. And in fact, I think originally you still had to have a copay or something, and then he eliminated the copays. So Medicare for All doesn't mean Medicare exactly as it is now with all of its flaws just expanded. It's expanding it and improving it. I hope that answered your question. Spent a month traveling in Europe, had amazing convos with people from around the world. I find it so refreshing how much politically awake people are outside the U.S. One thing everyone I spoke to knows is how corrupt the U.S. is. Yeah, it's very unfortunate. But we're fighting. We're fighting, and we're going to try to win that battle. It's a hard battle, though, and it's a long battle. Thoughts about Ben Jealous's poll numbers. If the Dem cultist trash didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any. I don't know anything about Ben Jealous's poll numbers, but I'll tell you this. I hope he fucking wins, because that guy would be wonderful as a governor. Already did that one. Already did that one. Medicare for All. Already did that one. The $32 trillion for Medicare for All, is that on top of what we already pay? No, it's not. Should we say the $1.1 trillion we already pay in Medicare and Medicaid would go towards the $32 trillion? So here's the reality about that. The $32 trillion is the cost over 10 years for Medicare for All. It's actually 32.6, I believe the exact number is. If we don't do it, it would cost, our current healthcare system would cost $34.6 trillion. So the 32.6 trillion for Medicare for All is a net savings. So that's a really important point. It's a point that needs to be made over and over, and I hope that answers your question. But it is 100% not adding on top of what we already pay. Hey Kyle, big fan. Isn't it interesting that about a year ago on your video, Bannon was for raising taxes on the rich and trying to convince Trump that way? Then no mention in his Sargon interview. Yeah, I covered part of that Sargon interview, the part that really pissed me off the most. He's a fake populist, man. That's all it is. He's a fake populist. And I went into excruciating detail as to how he's a fake populist and as to how he strawmans the left. He says, the populists on the left want the government to control every aspect of your life. Fucking horseshit, Steve. Horseshit. We want to get rid of warrantless NSA spying and get rid of the Patriot Act. We want to end the drug war. We want to, most populists on the left are totally in favor of a woman's reproductive choices. This is the government being out of somebody's life. So there are some ways in which we want a stronger federal government, like with healthcare, which is not the government controlling your life, it's just having a better healthcare system. And then there are other ways where we want smaller government, and he just glosses over that to make a hacky point. And he also will never tell you the truth about Trump, that Trump is serving the elites, and his economic policies are serving Wall Street and serving the rich. That's why Goldman Sachs was packed in his fucking administration. Hey, Kyle, I love your show. Been a sub since like 2013. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who's been along for the ride, and really happy we had 600,000 subs. Special thanks to Lilith for that 600,000. Special thanks to Leon. Special thanks to Drew, who does the cartoon fucking, I forgot exactly what it's called, but me as a cartoon. I think he just did another one. I got to retweet that. I got to go find it and retweet that. What do you think of campus speech codes that restrict hateful or violent speech? I don't agree with speech codes, period. I think the only rules against, the only regulations on free speech should be direct threats of violence and, doxing and perhaps online, like impersonating. But outside of that, yeah, there should be as few restrictions on speech as humanly possible. So, and I think that used to be considered broadly, that is the left-wing perspective, because people realized, oh, when they regulate speech, they always crack down on, like, poor and minority communities first. So since that's the case, of course you should support free speech, because they're going to use this for nefarious ends. But nowadays, unfortunately, there are a lot of people on the left who don't get that value of the ACLU's original position on free speech. They think that, to protect certain communities, we should regulate speech strictly, but they don't realize that once you open the door to regulating speech, it's those poor and minority communities that will get cracked down on first. Do you remember last year when the DNC was considering, have you seen the other guys as their slogan? That kind of was Hillary's 16 slogan. Yeah, it was. And it's fucking disastrous. Tom Perez has got to go. We need the populist left to take over, and we have to win on a proactive platform of Medicare-for-All and free college, living wage, ending the wars, a New Deal, ending the drug war, fighting climate change with a green technology revolution. If we fight for these things, we will win. What was it like staring Chris Christie in the face? Did you think he would eat you? Thanks for destroying the Daily Wire fool, by the way. You're welcome for that. And what was it like talking to Chris Christie? It was fine. I know I'm talking to a guy who's wrong about a lot of things, but I like the fact that I could converse with him like that and frame a question where it was going to checkmate him anyway. It checkmated him no matter what he said. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. He was pretty much checkmated right away, because what's he going to say? What's he going to say in response? No, weed should still be illegal. Okay. Thank you. You just walked into my trap, and you're stating the position that's against what 62% of Americans want, so you already look like a fool. But then later on, he amended his position. He said, leave it up to the states. He didn't used to say that. He used to say it should be banned at a federal level and at the respective state levels. So I somehow got him to tweak his position slightly, which is a win. And there were some marijuana outlets that covered that, and thank you to those outlets, by the way. Hey, Kyle, do you believe any populism on the right is fake, or it's a mix of nationalism and culture? No, so that's not the case that all populists on the right are fake populists. It is the case that the Bannons and Trumps and those types of people, they are fake populists. What would genuine right-wing populism be? Right-wing populism, so you could say it's somebody who takes a hard line on immigration, but also is against trade deal. Actually, you know what? I don't even know if you could be super hard line against immigration and be a populist, because populist is supporting what ordinary people want, and ordinary people, 75% of Americans want to have reasonable immigration in this country and think immigrants net are a benefit in the U.S. So I think so. If you're somebody who describes themselves as a right-winger, but you're against NAFTA and GATT and the World Trade Organization, and you're against these shitty trade deals that screw over the American people and serve corporations and elites, if you're one of those kinds of conservatives, then I think it's fair to say you are more populist than other conservatives, than the traditionally free market, let's do all the outsourcing type conservatives. But as a general rule, I think populism is actually much more vibrant on the left, because we actually support what the polls show the people want, and that's the definition of populism, doing what ordinary people want. But yes, there are like some random dudes in Arkansas and fucking, whatever, Mississippi and Montana who consider themselves on the right, but they're also populist and more populist than a guy like Trump or Bannon, who are just fake populists. Not meaning what we pay in private. We currently pay $1.1 trillion a year in Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare-for-All would be 3.2 trillion. It would be 32 trillion over 10 years. Does that mean we only need to raise an additional $2.1 trillion a year? I don't know, because I don't understand how you're framing the question. I know you're trying to say something about the current cost of Medicare, but I don't really understand your question, so sorry. I can't help you. These questions are probably better for the guy who crafted the bill, Bernie Sanders, than me, the idiot who just knows the basics. Did you hear about Ben Shapiro is selling supplements now? Oh no, Ben, what have you done? What have you done? That's going semi-Alex Jones, man. Jesus Christ. Kyle, you need to appear on Politicon's free speech panel next year. This year the panel was all conservative, just solidifying the misconception that the left equals censors and right equals censored. Yeah, there's nothing that's more annoying than that to me, especially because we have a president right now who he didn't brag about it, but he sued Bill Maher over a joke, which is 100% against free speech. He also tweeted about how we should ban flag burning, 100% against free speech and faux patriotism. He speaks about how we should open up the libel laws and how we should take away the licenses of media organizations that say things he doesn't like. So he's not for free speech. These guys they're such hypocrites. They're such hypocrites. It's so easy to get them to flip on the notion of free speech. Like Colin Kaepernick is a great example of that. Oh, but that's not a free speech issue. It's not a legal free speech issue, but it is the principle of freedom of speech that's at play, which is, hey, do you think that somebody should be able to speak their mind and talk about an issue if their employer doesn't like it? And I say yes to that, and I'm consistent on that front. Why do you think the spectrum has shifted so far to the right in the U.S. versus Canada? Just something I noticed during Politicon. Conservatives in Canada aren't for repealing single-payer, legal cannabis, etc. It's a good question, Trevor. I don't know. I mean, I think corporate money has a lot to do with it in the U.S. I think the Reagan Revolution in the 1980s had a lot to do with shifting that spectrum massively to the right. I think probably corporate money is the biggest culprit, though, because it's corporate money that keeps the entire Republican Party corporatist, and it keeps half the Democratic Party corporatist. So that spectrum is way to the right, even though the American people would like it to be way to the left, and the American people already agree with left-wing goals. Hi, Kyle. I'm a fan from China. Do you think it's possible for China to be a representative democracy system? What outcome can it be? Will it fall into chaos? I'm super curious about what you think. Yeah, I think absolutely China can become a representative democracy. Listen, any kind of giant change to the structure of a system is going to be destabilizing at first. But over time, that goes away. And over time, the system starts functioning more like a well-oiled machine. So right now in the U.S., we're more of an oligarchy than anything else. And it's a shame. And if we were to move to a system that's more democratic, if we were to abolish the Electoral College and get money out of politics and have clean elections, and if we were to do like direct ballot initiatives more often, I think at first it would seem like chaos and a mess and it would be scary. But over time, the system can become more stable and more secure. But you should always try to implement the proper policies, even though it might be a little bit destabilized at the beginning, because in the long run, we know the right thing to do is to move towards a better system for the people. What do I tell people in a country where guns are hard to come by, but school shootings still happen, so they don't go far right out of desperation? The premise of your question is not correct. So it's just a fact that where there is, and listen, I'm a moderate on the issue of guns. I want to be clear about that. So this is not me doing some sort of far left type rant. But it is just a fact that where there are more guns, countries where there are more guns, there is more gun violence. So, I mean, that's just a fact. So as a general rule, where there are fewer guns, there's less gun violence. So I have a problem with the framing of your question. My position on guns is I'm relatively moderate. I think law-abiding citizens should be able to have guns, but I think there should be regulations on it. I think we should ban certain kinds of guns. I think we should have tests for mental health as well as if they can use the gun properly. So I think there's a moderate position, but my moderate position also comes with the caveat, hey, I know that the fact that we have more guns than other developed countries will mean that we will have more gun deaths. So I hope that answered your question. I live in Durham, North Carolina with G.K. Butterfield as my representative. Do you know... That guy sounds hilarious. By the way, that sounds hilarious. G.K. Butterfield. It sounds like a brand of cookies. As my representative, do you know how he holds up a leftist populist, and how could I steer him or other Dems to that? I don't know anything about G.K. Butterfield off the top of my head, but if you really are interested in learning about him, type in G.K. Butterfield on the issues, and then you'll see his on the issues page, and you could read through all of his political positions. And do you know how he hold up a leftist populist and how I could steer him or Dems to do that? The only way to force Democrats to the left is to make them think they have no choice but to go left. So that means calling their office and bitching. That means putting pressure on them on Twitter. That means, like, be an asshole. Be an unapologetic asshole and trying to force Democrats left, because they need to feel like if I don't do this or that, I'm going to lose my job, you know? So I think that's important, and I think that that's something that people don't acknowledge usually. That's something that people should acknowledge, but they don't acknowledge. Okay, hold on one second, guys. Trying to fix something here. Okay, I can't fix that. Never mind. I think the PC and identity politics nature of the Mississippi Dems, MS Dems, are the main drivers of people towards the right. It could be in part, but it's not fully that. How can we combat this? The WSLD panel you were with at Politicon was terrible at this. Oh, I know. Yeah, the what should liberals do? I think that's what that stands for, panel. Listen, just be somebody who's unapologetically leftist, but you're also against political correctness and you're also against identity politics. I mean, that's all we could do, is let them know that we exist and that we're here and that what we care about are the actual substantive issues. And listen, that doesn't mean, when I say that, a lot of people hear like, oh, you don't care about minorities. Utter nonsense. It's that universal programs and the policies we advocate for actually are the policies that would help minorities. I mean, ending the drug war is a giant issue in minority communities because they are the drug war is disproportionately used to crack down on them. So, I mean, I feel like that's super important to point out. And so when we say, hey, I'm against identity politics, that doesn't mean like we're against minorities. It means we're in favor of universal programs that help everybody, and some of these universal programs that we're in favor of would actually disproportionately help minority communities. So just let people know that we exist, that we're anti-PC, we're anti-identity politics, and we're on the left, significantly on the left. Do you believe in Puerto Rican statehood? You know, my default position was that I didn't believe in it, but I don't know. I think I could be convinced in favor of it because it's almost like they're just exploited as like a colony, you know? And they certainly didn't get all of the help that they needed and deserved, and there certainly wasn't adequate help in the wake of Hurricane Maria, and they've been exploited to no end by Wall Street and been fucked over repeatedly. So it's something that's worth having a conversation about, but I don't have a hard opinion on it. You said populist left issues tend to work in districts except 1% districts. Would you consider Nassau and Suffolk on Long Island to be 1% districts? You'd have to look at their median income in that district to answer that question. I don't know off the top of my head if those are districts that it would or wouldn't work. Yeah, populism. I don't know when I brought this up, but I will bring it up now because I feel like it's very important. Populism only works in poor communities, middle-income communities, and sometimes in upper middle-income communities. So it works, not even just the top 1% districts are against it. I would say the top 5%. So the only places populism works, it's the bottom 95% on the economic ladder. Those people love populism. The rich and the almost rich don't love populism. So, but see, the thing is, that's almost that's as close as you can get to a flawless victory in politics because you have 95% of people on your side. So the only place I wouldn't run populist campaigns is in the richest districts in the country. I'm an asexual. I wanted to thank you for mentioning asexuality when covering stories related to watching you know what, and ask how you heard of it. I read an article. There was a great article. I forgot where, was it in Mike.com? It was on some website like that. I don't know, maybe Vice News or something, where they were like, it was about asexuals. And they were like, most people don't get it, but asexuals actually exist. Like, they're just people who, they're just like not interested in sex. And yeah, it's weird how they're never brought up. Like, people say, oh, there's straight people, there's gay people, there's bi people, and then there's like a spectrum. It's like, well, there's also asexuality, which is a tiny percentage, but it exists. So yeah, that's pretty cool that you're asexual, because that's, I don't know how many people that are that, and I'm curious what the exact number is. Do you see any positives to a monarchy over a republic? No, I don't see any positives to a monarchy. It's goofy, it's old, it's antiquated, it's silly. Hey Kyle, I've been a big fan of your show for the last 3 years. Do you think old Smarmy Smarm has a chance at all, or did Beto shoot himself in the foot going on Ellen and other big media platforms? I would say Beto has a chance, but I also think Ted Cruz has a chance. I don't know what's going to happen in that race. I don't know. I think it's a coin toss of a race. We're going to find out what happens, but I think it's a coin toss of a race. So yes, if your question is, does Ted have a chance? The question is, unfortunately, yes. What's your ideal realistic tariff amount for our allies currently? I can't answer that question, and here's why. It should be different on a country-by-country basis, because the trade situation with different countries is different. So you have to treat each one as its own thing and do what is most logical in those situations. But my general take on trade is, I would like to force U.S. corporations to stay in the U.S. and provide decent jobs to people. And I'm not going to kowtow to them and let them outsource jobs and then make more profit and employ fucking sweatshop labor. I wouldn't allow that. I would craft the rules to avoid that as much as possible. What do I say to a conservative Kool-Aid drinker friend who says America is already far left and Antifa and the left are all fascist? I've already tried explaining what fascism actually is. Show him my videos and hope that over time he begins to listen and learn, because there are some people who are too far gone, and as of right now, your friend sounds like he's too far gone, because if your whole point is saying that America's already far left and Antifa are fascists, and I mean, some of the tactics of Antifa are linked to what fascists do. They believe in violence as a political tactic that makes sense. But to say America's far left is like, guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. So you could show him my videos and hope that eventually he clicks out of it. But I don't know, man. I really don't know. He sounds like he's too far gone at the moment, and you're best served by not talking to him about politics. You can still be friends with him and all that stuff, but it just seems like avoiding politics is a good idea. Hey, Kyle, do you think a 15 minimum wage increase would be a shock to the economy? We never had a $15 minimum wage equivalency adjusted to inflation. So I don't think it would be, no. I think it would be a shock to the economy in the sense they would help a lot of people at the bottom very quickly. But the way you're supposed to do it is you have to slowly lean into it to get to the $15. So you increase, $2 at a time in 6 month blocks or so until you get to 15. Because what you want to do is, it is true that if you raise the minimum wage too much too fast, small businesses would fire some of the people that work for them because they'd say, listen, I just can't afford to pay this amount. But the whole idea is, if you slowly lean into it, then the studies have shown, the empirical data shows that that actually doesn't lead to an increase in unemployment. So that's an important point that a lot of people don't know, is that it doesn't lead to an increase in unemployment if you implement the minimum wage increase in a reasonable way. So that's what I would do. I would try to do the minimum wage increase in a reasonable way. So it wouldn't increase unemployment if you do it that way. That's what the studies show. And it's also a matter of principle that if you are a big business owner and you're not paying people a living wage, and then you're going to bitch when you're told to pay people a living wage, well, maybe you shouldn't be a big business owner in the first place because you're an asshole. Philosophical question. Knowing that we're in the sixth mass extinction, is it morally responsible to have kids in this world? Are they doomed to extinction? I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like that's so hardwired in human beings that most people are going to do that anyway, no matter what we say or do, or no matter how much we think about it or intellectualize about it. So it's almost like the question can't even be asked, because people are going to do what people are going to do. It's part of being a human. That's not to say that everybody reproduces, but most people reproduce. And they're going to do that no matter what. So I just feel like it's kind of a weird question that has no answer. I wouldn't call it immoral. I wouldn't call it unethical. I think you could say it's irresponsible, but at the same time as being irresponsible, it's also, I would say, unavoidable. That people are going to be people and they're going to reproduce. Jeff Bezos' net worth is $164.2 billion. Holy shit. I don't understand the way that you laid out the rest of this. 2018 to 5,207 equals 300. I don't understand your numbers, dude. Yeah, I don't understand the little equation you laid out for me because it's a little too complicated for me to understand. I'm not a math person, but what he's doing is he's trying to give a breakdown of what Jeff Bezos' net worth is and comparing that to like the median American. So yeah, raise taxes on that motherfucker. Amazon paid no taxes recently, so he needs to have an increase in his taxes. Hey Kyle, I'm a big fan. What's your opinion on Palestinians being killed while protesting a few days ago? I think it's terrible, man. I think it's terrible. I think the U.S. should immediately cut off all arms to Israel, and they should force them to the table to get some sort of a solution to the crisis in the Middle East. And Netanyahu's a war criminal, and he should be held accountable for that. So I think that it's beyond fucked up what's happening to Palestinians, and the occupation has gone on for way too long, and it's time that the U.S. cuts off funding and arms to Israel and brings justice. I don't think you should frame weed as small tweak to your consciousness because that sounds permanent, thus scary. It's better left just smoking weed, like you said, just giggly and high. I like the small tweak to your consciousness thing. Maybe I'll add the word temporary because that'll make it sound more accurate. Thoughts on California's seceding and anti-federalist arguments with the national government, and if California can have a more positive impact on the U.S. world as independent. I don't think it's going to happen in the same way that I don't think it would happen with Texas, but I can see theoretical situations in which I'm open to the idea that they actually can become their own thing. I think we should do everything humanly possible to make it all work the way it is, but in a worst case scenario where we have irreconcilable differences, the door is always open for Texas or California to become independent. But that's a much more complicated conversation to have and a longer conversation to have. Somebody said I missed a $20 chat. I'm sorry. I'm sure I missed like 100 chats. I'm trying to answer all of them. You missed my comments twice. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it if you could find it now. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, dude. Let me see. Wilhelm something. I'm trying, dude. The certain gun... I can't. I don't see it. I don't fucking see it, dude. Is selling... I'm sorry, dude. I missed it. Is selling supplements enough to prove that Ben Shapiro and Alex Jones don't believe they're redirected and are instead are only manipulating and lying to their audience in order to squeeze as much money out of them as possible? I don't know. I think that... I don't know which commentators on the right are lying just for personal gain, and I don't know which ones genuinely believe it. It's hard to talk about people's intent and motives like that. All I can do is respond to the claims that they make on policy grounds and substantive grounds. And on that front, I think those guys are ridiculously wrong, which is why I rip them to shreds. But I will say it is extra suspect if you start selling supplements in particular, because that's like, it's kind of one of the scummiest of scummy things to do. Hey Kyle, big fan, been subscribed to you. I was wondering if you could explain the difference between BDS and the boycotts of right-wing shows and why you favor the former and not the latter. Well, I support boycotts, divestments, and sanctions because I think it's the only way to stop Israel from, totally wiping out the Palestinians. And I don't believe in violence, so I think the best way to do that is put economic pressure in the same way that economic pressure was put on apartheid South Africa. And it works, which is why Israel freaks out over it. As far as boycotting of right-wing shows, that's a matter of even though I disagree with these people, I think they should have the right to free speech and to say whatever the fuck they want. And I don't think that just because there's a lot of pressure on a provider or of a platform that those right-wing hosts should be axed. In the same way that if people on the right tried to come for my head, I hope that you guys would say, hey man, don't do that, and we shouldn't do that to you guys either, because it's a free speech issue. So I just think one's a free speech issue and the other one is a human rights issue where Palestinians are basically being ethnically cleansed, and we need to put economic pressure on Israel in order to stop them from continuing to do that and to get some sort of a peace deal in the process. I don't think you should frame weed. Already did that one. I think tweak is harmful because we tied pod kids, associate that with being too high on meth. Oh, tweak. Okay. Yeah, but that's your issue, because tweak is not just that. The word tweak means to tweak something. It's like a little change to something. That's what tweak means. Just wanted to say you're awesome. Thank you, Zane. In France, it's the law to donate expired food to food banks. Would you support this issue here? Yes. My daughter and I enjoyed meeting you at Politicon. Thank you for what you do. Well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciated all the love at Politicon. It meant the world to me. You guys are awesome. Food banks. Yes, I love that idea. It should be the law to donate expired food to food banks. Love it. Hey, Kyle, huge fan since 2015. How are populists going to win in the heartland and South when the scary big government narrative is so prominent? I think that narrative can be defeated so fucking quickly if we'd actually fight. If the left fights, that narrative would be absolutely obliterated. Because you bring up the relevant facts. Hey, FDR was one of the most popular presidents of all time, and they brought in fucking term limits because of him, because he kept winning, because everybody fucking loved him, because his idea of big government was let's give people jobs, and jobs are pretty fucking popular. So the left needs to fight on that front. And what happens is they're so scared of their own shadow that as soon as the right says, oh my God, big government, the left shits itself and runs away and acts like they need to concede that point to the right. You don't have to concede it. The only area where you concede it is on the issues where we actually should believe in smaller government, like with the drug war, like with NSA spying, and like with foreign policy. Did you hear about the Texas voting machines changing from Beto to Ted Cruz? I did hear about that. We spoke about that a little bit earlier today. Kyle, I have been saying that you have been missing South Carolina for a while. Maybe ask TJ Kirk about Super Chats. Oh, Super Chats you meant, not South Carolina. I think you may know how this works. No, I think it's just a raw numbers issue. How, I don't know if all of them aren't showing up or if I'm just getting so many at once that it's hard for me to get to all of them in time, because they disappear very quickly. The smaller the amount, the quicker they disappear. The higher the amount, the longer they're up there. And sometimes I just miss the $5 ones because I'm too busy ranting about some of them, some other question. Who should we be voting for here in California? In the Senate race? That's a no-brainer. I mean, Kevin De Leon, even though I have issues with him, is infinitely better than Dianne Feinstein. Not even close. I'd vote for Kevin De Leon over Dianne Feinstein in a second. But you guys should make up your own minds. Okay, that's the Super Chat one. Already did that. Texas voting machines. Already did that. What are your thoughts on vegetarianism? Since our current way of animal agriculture is unsustainable, greenhouse gas emissions, antibiotic resistance, too much land required. Is it the future? I don't know. I don't know if it's the future, but I know that, as I've often said, vegetarianism and veganism, I agree with it from a morality perspective. You're not... there's less harm done to living creatures as a result of your diet than there is by a meat eater's diet. Now, having said that, I was raised as a meat eater. I still eat meat. I'm not necessarily proud of that. I guess I'm brainwashed by culture to an extent, you can say. I don't foresee a time where we ban meat consumption, but it would be good if we can, I don't know, move towards some sort of, what's that, lab-created meat? If they can make the lab-created meat taste like the real thing, why not go in that direction and not fucking slaughter people? And we need to immediately end factory farming and have reasonable rules and regulations in place for the treatment of animals in those conditions. Hey Kyle, fan from Amsterdam, how would you defend protectionism to your allies? Ever since the Marshall Plan, countries like the Netherlands have gotten very Americanized and looked up to the U.S. Well, again, I already touched on this earlier in the podcast, but I'll say it one more time. Trade is inevitable. So we're going to trade with other countries. We don't have all of the goods we need, and other countries do have some of the goods we need. So we have to get those in our country somehow. How do you do it? You trade. We shouldn't fucking invade them and take whatever shit we want. We need to trade. Now, having said that, the trade deal should be crafted in a way where it's good for workers as well. And unfortunately, now the way trade deals are crafted, they're only crafted with the well-being of corporations and CEOs in mind. And that's a fucking shame. Hold on, guys. I'm getting rid of this fucking asshole. Remove, report. Okay, I got rid of it. Sorry about that. Some dude just kept saying the same fucking dumb Jew rat talk bullshit, so I got rid of him. Anyway, what was I saying? Protectionism. Craft trade deals that make it so that you also help workers, and you're not just outsourcing jobs and screwing over the entire working class for the benefit of rich elites and corporations. Look at what happened in the Rust Belt. Look at what happened as a result of NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China. The working class in the U.S. was absolutely gutted as a result of that. So what I'm saying is trade is inevitable, but we should only trade out of necessity, and we should only, do trade deals that also benefit the American worker. And I think that that's a very, reasonable standard to have. What do you think about the argument that cutting arms to Saudi wouldn't reduce terrorism because they would get funding from China and Russia? I think that if somebody comes to your house and says, quick, I need a gun to rob a bank, if your reaction is, I'm not going to give you that gun, I'm going to give you that gun, because if I don't give it to you, my neighbor Bob will give it to you, or my other neighbor Greg will give it to you. I think that's a stupid thing to say, and a stupid thing to be concerned about. If they were to go down that path and get weapons from other nations, okay, let them be the immoral assholes and let them iron out the details and have a massive headache in the process. As a matter of principle, we should actually care about human rights and not contribute to the net evil shit that's happening in the world. Okay, so that means not arming Saudi Arabia and even sanctioning Saudi Arabia. And it means doing a global realignment of priorities and trying to find a way where we don't add to death and destruction and terrorism, because what we're doing is we're arming terrorists in Saudi Arabia. Thank you for answering my questions. I really appreciate it. It is because of you I went to University for Political Science, hopefully to be a politician in Canada one day. That'd be awesome, man. That'd be awesome. I'd love that. I'd fucking love that if that happened to you. Okay, this is gonna... The next time I do this, I will have a moderator, and they'll get rid of all the actual trolls. And for the record, I don't consider a troll somebody who's asking a difficult question or disagreeing with me on something. I consider a troll an actual troll who's like just trolling nonstop. So anyway, I'm a big fan, but I really hope you reconsider wanting to ban ARs or AKs. Those bans are based on cosmetics. There are a ton of hunting rifles that have that feature. I encourage you to watch Nuance Bros AR-15 video. That's fine, but at the same time, I really wish that that you guys would be honest and upfront about what you support. Because there's a lot of like, oh, I don't like that idea going on. But then when you talk to a lot of these people, it turns out they don't have any well fleshed out ideas on what their ideal standard for gun reform is. Their only point is, fuck the lefties. And it's like, okay, gotcha, but what do you support? And a lot of people just never say that. Somebody said, Kyle, missed my super chat, turn off the time setting. Oh, turn off the time setting, would that help? Maybe that would help. Let me see if I could do that. Participants, pop out chat, send feedback. I don't know how to do that. Sorry, dude. Should I vote for Stacey Abrams? She supports investing in our military bases. Well, it's Stacey Abrams or some insane fucking far right-wing goon, right? I mean, if those are your choices, that's not really a choice. I would vote for Stacey Abrams. Any advice for a college student? Hey, Kyle, fan from Denmark. What are your... Advice for a college student, just do whatever you know where your heart is, okay? And always do the thing, I gave this advice the other week on my channel. Always do the thing that you, on your deathbed way off in the future, would look back at you now and go, you did the right thing. Hey Kyle, fan from Denmark, what are your thoughts on modern day NATO and European allies in general? Should USA protect Estonia, Turkey? Where's the line? I'm not a fan of modern day NATO. I think that it's basically in place to fuck with Russia, keep Russia at bay, and we've lied. NATO has lied to Russia. We've lied to Russia repeatedly and said we're not going to expand towards their border, and we've repeatedly expanded towards their border. So NATO oftentimes is the aggressor as they feign like they're the victim. Now, that's not saying that Putin's a good guy, because he's not, but it's leading to a lot of problems. NATO has led to a lot of problems. As far as protecting our allies and how close should we be with Estonia and Turkey and all that stuff, I would honestly have to sit down with all these countries and we'd have to renegotiate a new treaty and a new way of looking at this stuff, because I'm tired of the U.S. being the world police. And I do want to move away from that. And I know that there's some people who vehemently disagree with that position. Fine, but let's argue on the merits of it. But instead what happens is when somebody takes the position that I take, they're smeared. They're smeared as if like they're some sort of crazy, like, what do you mean? Obviously the United States needs to be the world's sole superpower and needs to be in charge of the protection for all of these countries. Listen, man, I find it a hard thing to tell a kid from Kentucky who doesn't even know anything about Estonia that he needs to go and fight and die to protect Estonia. So, and I don't think Putin is a Hitler-level threat as many people would fearmonger him to be. And I feel like that's the argument that everybody defaults to when they want to continue the NATO status quo. But we really do need to take another hard look at NATO and potentially renegotiate and switch up the way that we do things. I know that's not too specific an answer, but I don't have the specific answers to that. That's a much longer conversation, and I would need to really figure out what we should do going forward. And I would have to talk to the leaders of these other nations in order to figure out what we should do. Did you come across those strange stories about diplomatic experiencing a sonic attack in Cuba? I did. That was nuts. I don't know what led to that and who did it. I am a big fan, but I really hope you reconsider wanting to ban ARs. Already did that. Do you come across those strange stories about diplomats? Already did that. Should I vote for Stacey Abrams? Already did that. What are your thoughts on resource-based economic philosophy of Jacques Fresco and Peter Joseph? Peter Joseph is the zeitgeist guy, and he's way to the left of me. Right? Peter Joseph is the zeitgeist guy? I think he is. He's way to the left of me. I'm not that radical, man. I'm really not. I believe in social democracy. I believe in, I call myself a populist. I believe in populist leftism. Populism means supporting policies that are good for ordinary people. So yeah, that's my thing. Is I'm a libertarian leftist too, you could say, because on social issues I'm very libertarian, and on economic issues I'm leftist. So I do like the Scandinavian model. That's what I like. So anything that goes beyond that and is more communal, and I don't know. I'm not sold on that. And I also like a variation of direct democracy, constitutional direct democracy on some issues. So there's that. Universal background checks for every purchase, including private sales, is as far as I would take it. In my opinion, healthcare reform and lower poverty would massively reduce gun violence. Thanks again for answering. You are my hero. Hey, thanks, man. Well, I got my answer. I asked him, hey, what do you support? He said universal background checks for every purchase, including private sales. Fair enough. I think we should do a few more things than that, but I respect your opinion. Hey, Kyle, you said that you were going to smoke on air with Joe Rogan if he invited you to go hunting. How'd that go? He's doing his Sober October, so he didn't even offer. So, but that's okay, because I'm scared of it anyway. Hi, Kyle, what do you think of Bernie voting for the $1.5 trillion F-35 program in 2016 behind our back? It was covered by CNBC, but radio silence from all progressive media except for Abby. I think Bernie had spotty records on foreign policy. First of all, I didn't see that story. There's got to be some catch to that story. There's got to be because the F-35 too, my understanding was that nobody knew when they originally voted for it that it was going to be this expensive. And then over time it got more expensive, and so they had to go back and keep giving more and more funds to it. Do I have that right? That was my understanding of it. I could be wrong. But as far as Bernie's foreign policy record, there's one issue where Bernie has been so-so, and that's on the issue of Israel, where he does not support BDS, and he's very milquetoast on that issue, and very standard, close to the other Democrats. I mean, he calls out Netanyahu more than any other Democrat does, but he's still not great on the issue. And I don't know what he would do to actually fix Israel-Palestine if he were president. But outside of that, I actually think Bernie gets a little bit of a bum rap on the left as being not very good on foreign policy, because if you actually look at his voting record, he's pretty good. Like, he voted against the Iraq War, for example. He did vote against this recent military budget, which even Elizabeth Warren voted for. So I think Bernie actually gets a little bit of a bum rap from the left on foreign policy. I think there's some issues where he falls short, but I still think probably on 70 or 80% of the foreign policy issues, he's good, and he's been on the right side. What do you think of social democratic policies getting eroded in Europe as capitalism comes under threat? Is social democracy only a temporary band-aid that will ultimately be eliminated as long as capitalism remains? No, I don't think that. I think that there's always going to be... Listen, politics is never straightforward. It's always messy, and there's always a back and forth and a tug of war, okay? So you're always going to have right-wing reactionary forces trying to drag you in the wrong direction on a variety of issues, if not all the issues. And the goal is just to have a robust, powerful, strong left that is unapologetic and wins the argument and really can hold that spectrum to the left. So I think that there will always be the threat of losing positive, popular programs and things of that nature, but that would also exist in any kind of society. Like, there is no utopia, man. I believe in, like, close to utopia. We could have a really awesome system, but you're never going to get a full utopia, because not everybody's always going to agree that good things are good. So I don't think it's a band-aid. I think that the way to avoid what you're talking about happening as much as possible is to try to put these things as rights in the Constitution. So if you had, or like some European countries have a right to healthcare in their Constitution. That's awesome. That's pretty cool. I think we should have a right to healthcare. And this is where Ben Shapiro goes, well, but you want to enslave my wife if you do that. That's such a nonsense argument. Most people look at it and laugh immediately. It's like when he compared healthcare to expensive furniture. Fuck off, Ben. That's not even close to intelligent or intellectual. It's not even a point. It's just fucking brain farts that make no sense. But, like, if you want to stop the assault on basic things, the most surefire way to do that is to put it in the Constitution and make the bar to change it super high, like 75% of the country or something like that. So, there's always going to be a back and forth in politics no matter what the system is, but no, I don't think social democracy is uniquely vulnerable in that respect. Hey, my comment probably disappeared. If Bernie were to win in 2020 and pass his entire agenda, do you think the Supreme Court could deem it unconstitutional? I think there will be some issues in which the Supreme Court will strike down progressive wins. Some issues. I don't think they'll do it on all issues. I think on some issues they will strike it down. Because they need to have enough of a bullshit rationale to do a tap dance pretending it's unconstitutional, and there's no way they can do that on every progressive issue. But on some progressive issues, they will slap it down. What's your opinion about Neo-Ottoman Empire? The whole Middle East uniting together rather than killing each other. Well, my opinion on a Neo-Ottoman Empire would be, look out, because I think Erdogan actually wants a new Ottoman Empire, and I don't think that would necessarily be a good thing, because I think you'd have to recreate it with force. So I don't like the idea of a Neo-Ottoman Empire, but I think Mohammed bin Salman and Erdogan are doing a little bit of an ego battle and jockeying for position to get the favor of the U.S. so that they can expand. They can get the green light to expand. And it's scary to see what's unfolding right now. How do you feel about illegal immigration to Canada from the USA? Border resources in Toronto are running low as Canadians are pissed at Justin. How do you feel about illegal immigration to Canada from the USA border resources in Toronto are running low as Canadians are pissed at Justin? I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but Canada, my understanding is that every time I've been to Canada, they have a very strict, actually very strict border policies. Like, you can't be a criminal or you're not allowed in at all. Like, you can't have anything on your record or they kick you out. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about illegal immigration in Canada. I know they're better with refugees, even though they're very strict on immigration. that there is a distinction there. There is a distinction that people need to understand. But I don't even know what Justin Trudeau's policies are. I don't know if he's made the border more porous or less porous. I wouldn't be surprised either way, because he's got a little bit of a on again, off again record on a variety of issues. But I don't know. I feel like the immigration policies of Canada should be left up to Canada, and it's not really me to say. I could tell you what I think of a U.S. immigration policy and what I would do in that situation, but that's a different question. How do you argue for an increased minimum wage when people use the small business argument? You say what I just said before, which is that the empirical studies show that if you raise the minimum wage to a living wage, it doesn't increase unemployment. Because that's the only counter-argument they have is, what about the unemployment? Well, no, the studies show it actually doesn't increase unemployment, so your one argument is bullshit. And now the real argument that you need to flip back on them is, how can you support an economic system where you're telling somebody they have to work full-time and they don't even make enough money to survive? Conservatives demonize welfare, but providing general welfare is written in the first of our Constitution. It's in the Constitution, yes. The general welfare clause is in the Constitution, and it has historically been used to back up a number of social programs. I think I missed one back here. Let me take a look. Hi, Kyle. What do you think of Bernie voting? Oh, I already did that one. I didn't miss it. Universal background checks. I already did that one. Okay. All right. You guys can send in. We could wrap it up now because I am getting tired and I'm hungry. There was once a guy named Ben whose fast talking will make your head spin. He pitches a fit in hopes you will forget the subject by 3 sentences in. Sharon, that was very witty. Very well done. All right, so you guys can cut off the super chats now. I want to thank you very much for sending them in. I actually haven't even said anything yet about, or at least I didn't do it in pre-planned comments, about the 600,000 subs. Me and Lilith were talking about it just before I came on air. I think the reason that we even hit 600,000 subs is because I haven't changed the formula of the content I cover. I still do basically the same thing I was doing when I had 10,000 subs, and it just grew. And I love you guys. I appreciate everything you've done for this show. This show wouldn't exist without you and your support. It means the world to me that you show me as much love and support as you do. When I was at Politicon the other week, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. Just the outpouring of love and affection, and you guys say that the show has given you meaning and it changed your outlook and it got you into politics and all this stuff. I can't thank you enough for all that. I mean, it really does mean the world to me. It touched me it just touched me in a way that I didn't know I was capable of feeling those emotions that I felt. So thank you so much. We got 600,000 now. I'll tell you something else. We're about to cross 500 million views, bitch. 500 million views. 500 million we're about to cross. That is a fucking powerhouse, okay? That's what we are. That's what you made the show. So I'm really excited about that. So onward to 700,000. We'll see how fast we hit that. And then, yeah, man, onward to a million. I mean, that's the next time I actually get some of one of these things, the fucking play button. I got the 100,000 play button, but they don't send one until you hit a million after that. So I'm looking forward to getting that next play button, son. I'll tell you that. I really want that next play button. I actually cherish the play button, believe it or not. It's pretty cool. But anyway, thanks so much for being along for the ride. I see a few more, I think, came in. Let's see. Social democratic policies. Already did that. Minimum wage. Okay, I'll do these last few and then we'll be done. So, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is being constantly smeared and made fun of by Fox News and the far right. Even casuals think she's dumb. What do? You fight back, man. You fight back. Gotta fight back. I've covered a bunch of her stuff since she's gotten elected, but whenever I see people shitting on her, I try to cover it and be like, you're fucking wrong, but I guess they're doing it more and I've lost fucking pace with all the shitting on her that they do. But yeah, it's preposterous. I've seen the articles, she's like Sarah Palin. Fuck you! You think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is like Sarah Palin? That proves you're a partisan hack and you're drunk on both sidism, So that's what they are. They're drunk on both sidism. So anyway. Sorry, one more. Congrats on 600K subs. I'm more into Spanish and European politics, but love your show. Is there any book you would recommend to have a better understanding of U.S. politics for foreigners besides your channel? Sorry for my English. The only books that I've recommended to people, Tom Hartman, The Undeclared War on the Middle Class. is a great book. Tom Hartman, The Undeclared War on the Middle Class. And Noam Chomsky, which one do I recommend for him the most? Manufacturing Consent is more media-based. Hegemony or Survival. That's probably the best one. I used to say hegemony, and people made fun of me. Hegemony or Survival. Hegemony. Something like that, however you say it. Hegemony or Survival. That's the move. That's the book. So check that out. That's more about foreign policy. But Tom Hartman, The Undeclared War on the Middle Class, is the one about domestic economic policy. So anyway, check that out. I love you guys to death. Now let's see if I can figure out how to fucking turn this goddamn live stream off. I love you, and I'll see you guys later. And let's see if this works.